Not my favorite start to the year. But we'll get through it, right? In a couple of years, we'll laugh about it. You know? I think
It's now 6 p.m. and I'm calling to order this regular board meeting of the Sunnyvale School District Board of Education. This meeting is available in English and Spanish. So should I turn it over to them to make their announcement?
Absolutely. Buenas noches. Se utilizará la función de interpretación de Zoom para soporte en inglés y español. Todos los participantes de esta llamada deben seleccionar su idioma de preferencia haciendo clic en el idioma correspondiente cuando el anfitrión active la función de interpretación. Dicha función se encuentra en el panel de herramientas en el icono del globo terráqueo. El modo de interpretación para esta reunión será el simultáneo. Gracias por su atención y colaboración. The Zoom interpretation feature will be used in this Zoom meeting for English and Spanish support. All participants on this call must select their language of preference by clicking the language when the host turns on the interpretation feature. This is found in the world icon located on your feature panel. Interpretation for this meeting will be conducted simultaneously. Thank you for your attention and collaboration.
Please note that a recording is being made at the direction of the board and that the recording may capture sounds of those attending the meeting. I see that all board members are, well, actually, Nancy, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, but for some reason, I can't have the video.
Okay. Is that just a permissions thing?
Here we go. Thank you.
Hi, Nancy.
Hi. Okay, so I see that all board members are present. So we
Bien.
can. Please join me in the pledge of allegiance.
Jesus, could you please promote me to interpreter? Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So now we're on to.
Entonces,
Are we ready?
It looks like she's still not in interview.
yeah, I'm still waiting to be on the right channel.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Jeremy.
Am I the only one following your order, Mike? I think I am.
Well, I respect that. Get a cookie.
He,
Oh.
yeah, his email just like, yeah. I almost, which crew cheese did you get?
Tuna.
Oh, I thought that the brie was big and I know get it early. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But look at yours, I'm like, I should have gotten it because it is good cold too.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. The brie one, yeah. Yeah, that's why I was like, I still didn't leave yours. I'm like, dang it, I should have gotten it. Well, even the tomato soup, that's pretty, because I love doing that and then tomato soup.
Yeah.
What?
That's
No, they're butternut squash.
good too. That works.
Oh, yeah. But I love their tomato soup.
With
And a
grilled
grilled
cheese?
Yeah, yeah. And it goes with the grilled cheese, I think. You have to get like a half sandwich soup.
Well, I usually get the brie with fig and apple.
Oh, yeah.
That's the grilled cheese I normally get. So I don't really dip that one into the tomato soup, but I get that and the tomato soup, which is even separate.
Yeah.
But I do love, just like at home, grilled cheese dipped in tomato soup.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I thought this part was gonna be nothing to take, so I'm not big fan of broadcasting me eating, but.
Hi, did we adjourn? Are we in the meeting?
We're in the meeting, but we're waiting, we're having some technical difficulties. We're trying to promote the interpreter to the correct position. So we're just waiting a moment.
Okay, that's,
Sorry.
I just wanted clarification.
Thank you, sorry.
Whatever link they use, it does it up to everything.
Perfect.
We're there. Okay, great. Okay, so now it's time to approve the agenda. If there's any member of the public who would like to speak on this item, please raise your hand here or use the raised hand feature on Zoom. Not seeing any here. Are there any online? No. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I move approval of the agenda as posted.
I second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The chair votes aye. With that, the motion passes. Any discussion on the agenda? Seeing none, we are on to item number 3. The annual English Learner Progress Report presented by Director of Curriculum and Instruction, Christina Valentine. The Board of Education will review the annual English Learner Progress Report and discuss related topics identified during the November Board of Education meeting. If there is any member of the public who wishes to speak on this item, please use the raised hand feature now. Or if you're in person, you can raise your hand. Do you have any? No. Okay, seeing none, is it Dr. Valentine?
Not Dr. Valentine yet.
Any minutes. Okay, thank you.
Any minute.
Too much it is, too much it is.
Keep doing your homework.
I did my readings ahead of time. All right, good evening, board. Tonight, John Watts and I will provide a broad overview of 3 aspects of interconnected work. But this presentation is the product of many of our staff members. And we also know we have direction to keep this under 20 minutes tonight, so no small task. But we're going to first talk about the English Learner Annual Update with subsequent student data. Secondly, the Trimester 1 local assessment updates with our lens and focus on English learners. And finally, English Learner Program updates, all with the lens on equitable outcomes for our multilingual students. In an effort to provide as much time as possible for board discussion, we have provided comprehensive and extensive data and information related to the English Learner Annual Update and Trimester 1 local assessments. For tonight's presentation, we're going to highlight some of those data points and spend the presentation time on the programmatic aspects of the English Learner Program in Sunnyvale. Then most of the time will be on board discussion. Thanks. For the English Learner Annual Update, we present annually on demographic and achievement data of our multilingual learners. English learners being a state term utilized by CalPADS as well as our assessment system still. I will use these terms interchangeably throughout the presentation and acknowledge that multilingual learners is a phrase that is personally challenging for my multilingual type. So to highlight some of the demographic information from slides 3 through 17, a slight majority of our students are multilingual when they enter school. They may be reclassified or be identified as initial fluent English proficient or be an English learner. Most of our multilingual students are Spanish speakers. And also we wanted to highlight that our multilingual students are varied and have different backgrounds. Depending on which school they're at, they may speak different languages. For example, San Miguel's multilingual learners are 88% Spanish speaking and 3% Filipino or Tagalog speaking. And that also varies within the Juntos program. For our annual reclassification rates, they have varied over the last 4 years. For example, last spring, we did not receive our summative LPAC data before the close of the school year, so we were unable to classify any of our students in the spring reclassification window. And that's historically been our larger reclassification window. Despite that, our averages are still higher of reclassification in comparison to the county and the state. We have and will continue to make changes to our reclassification process, as well as all the instructional practices that support reclassification to reduce barriers and increase the connection between teachers, students, and family.
Ms. Valentine,
Yes.
I'm just thinking that I appreciate what you're saying. You're saying it very quickly.
Yes.
And I think that probably this is a presentation that our translator would want to be translating.
Oh, thank you.
So if you could just slow down just a tiny bit. We promise to let you, if you go over a little, we won't cut off your mic.
Thank you so much. There's no music play off. Thank you.
Very nice.
Thank you, Bridget. We did want to highlight that although we look at demographic factors such as students with IEPs that are also English learners, students who may be socioeconomically disadvantaged in addition to English learners, these demographic factors are by no, I will slow down. These demographic factors are by no means an indicator of success. Rather, this helps us better understand the needs of our students, the assets that they bring, and from an equity lens, what supports we need to provide. We provided information around our long-term English learners and our students that are at risk of becoming long-term English learners. Again, these are phrases in descriptors from the state level. And we also know that we want to be aware that our students are at risk of becoming long-term English learners and that we have a call to action to support them. One challenge for us in long-term English learner data is that this demographic group should and will change over the course of school year and over a course of years. So students may start with us and become reclassified. So students exit being this English learner group, and also students come into our schools from other schools across the country or the state and join our English learner group. So this is just an example of how we track our students over multiple grade levels. And lastly, we want to highlight a joint production.
Oh, right.
We recognize that looking at students who may overlap different demographic groups can be hard. So what we did is we analyzed how many students in our district are socioeconomically disadvantaged, look at how many of them are English learners, and how many of those English learners are also long-term English learners. So this is a Venn diagram with cross sections so you can look at overlapping areas.
The fun thing about this also, it took me a little while to find something that would do this, but it's also proportional. So everything is to scale, showing different size of the different populations to be able to see.
So with that brief background into our English learner annual update, we're going to move into our local assessment data and academic indicators.
Thanks. Okay, and again, instead of focusing really on, like analyzing the graph, I'm going to tell more of a story of the different changes and things that we've done around this assessment. I actually wrote it, even though I do so much technology, occasionally I even write things. And if you want to see, this is my graph of that last slide, the Venn diagram before it actually came to production. So elementary reading data, some of the changes that we made this year, we made some quite large changes in response to both kind of what we learned from the pandemic coming out of that, and also just really recognizing that we need to make some shifts to be more responsive for teachers and students. So some of the things that we did this year was we looked at the windows, we extended some of the assessment windows, so the time that teachers are given kind of to give those assessments. We recognize that, especially with absences right now happening due to COVID or other things, it can be really hard when there's one-on-one assessments. You need to connect with the whole class, so we've extended some of those windows. We've also alternated between NWEA, which is our new reading assessment, and then more formative measures also. So every other trimester, they go back and forth. That'll also allow them to focus more on some of the students that are not proficient yet. So we can get a focus on them and really like work with them one-on-one, and then check in again while still getting a really good dipstick measure of all students and how they're progressing. This is the kinder literacy data from this is our foundational literacy assessment that we've been doing for a while. We slowly make some adaptations and changes to that, but for the most part, that's been around for a while. The new thing this year was there was a group over the summer that had put together cut points. So previously, for this whole foundational literacy assessment that has a bunch of smaller components, we never had consistent cut points to say what was proficient at each time of year. So we now have cut points that are aligned across the whole district. So at least we're looking at this data and having similar language of what are the expectations that we have for students. And this also goes along with the CCEIS plan. And this is a component kind of that overlaps there. So trying to get as early as possible, intervening and understanding who's going to need more support in that area. Elementary math this year, we're using, again, we're kind of going back and forth between NWEA, which is that adaptive, it's a new assessment that is adaptive, comprehensive, and, oh, is that in cursive? And so we go back and forth between NWEA and now we have a formative math task also. So again, trying to alternate and be more responsive and understand where students are. We're also in between the new math framework, still hasn't been officially adopted, which means also new curriculum. So we're in this kind of standstill where we can't adopt new curriculum yet, but we do know the gist of kind of the direction we're headed. So in the meantime, a lot of our TOSAs are providing PD and support with different curriculum and different resources that are out there to help us kind of move in that direction because we need to continually be moving even though we don't have new curriculum. So a lot of our focus has been around that, math. And then this is the middle school data, but one of the big things that we did this year is for the first time that at least I've known, each content area in middle school now has a common assessment. So previously, it was really just kind of math, I think, and ELA, English Language Arts, that had their common assessment, but now we have history, social studies, and science, ELA, and math across both middle schools. And we're also utilizing the common late starts, that time when both middle schools can get together and plan across sites, and they're talking about the assessments, looking at student data, and seeing kind of what improvements they can make and what they're doing that makes a difference in the classroom. The other neat thing that unfortunately kind of timed right with this Omicron wave was, but I'm still moving forward with it. I put together some different data, different spreadsheets that show teachers how their students are doing on all of these assessments. Because a lot of times the ELA teacher will only see the scores of their students on their assessment. But there's so much commonality between the ELA assessment, the history, social studies, and the science, that to be able to see how that one student is performing in each of the different subject areas could be really helpful because you might see that, and they're really similar, like both the history, social studies, and science are doing a claim evidence reasoning. And that's their assessment, so they can see in that same writing structure, how do they do in history, how do they do in science, in the hopes that now we could also have those teachers collaborate and say, hey, I have this teacher, or this student in my class, they're not quite getting this here, but I saw that they did, pretty well in your class. Can you show me that work? Is there a certain structure you have in place? Is it the content maybe? And hopefully we're able to get kind of more cross-curricular collaboration.
Thanks. So one of our ELD TOSAs worked on a why English learners, why ELD? So to start our talk about English Learner Program, we're just going to watch the first minute and 37 seconds of this video. While it's queuing up, this is a video that we've utilized across all of our district professional developments at both elementary and middle schools to reinvigorate why we focus on our multilingual students. And again, while it's pulling up, I'll just keep talking and I will slow the pace. So we'll watch the first minute and 37 seconds. The rest of the video is embedded in the presentation if you want to watch it later. What she does a great job is identifying the demographic trends across our nation and our state in terms of students. And also that this isn't the flavor of the day, that our multilingual learners are here and we need to assert them.
We're going to talk about why ELD in this section. Why is it important to teach ELD and make time to plan for it? And we're really going to think about going beyond what we call a mandate as to why we should teach ELD. Our English learner population in the US is reflected in this data. And when we think about education, there's so many pendulum swings that we might think that things come and go. And why invest my time in something and learn something when it's just going to be gone? Well, I want to take a look at the English learner population and what is predicted in 2025 in terms of the total number of students who will be in the US. Looking from 2000 to 2017, such a huge jump in our English learners. In 2025, it's almost 2.5 times greater than it was in 2017. This is showing us our English learner population is not a trend in which it will just swing from left to right. Our English learners are here to stay. There is going to be a greater amount of them coming our way. And what that means for us as educators is that we need to be ready to serve and give them access.
So although we won't get into the entire video, she also talks about the long-term impacts of being identified as an English learner through high school, and how that can impact career readiness and also college acceptance. So I was talking with a San Miguel Puntos parent who immigrated from Mexico about our focus on English learners and our short and long-term goals. And she said, that this is an idiom in Mexico that loosely translates into, you're not making enchiladas, so you can't rush the process. She said that our focus on English learners is worthy, and she said there isn't an immediate turnaround. And that's true. Language acquisition does take time. Fulfilling the vision for our English learners is important and complex. We are doing the important work of and rewarding work of focusing on our multilingual learners and ensuring equitable outcomes. So our vision for Sunnyvale's multilingual learners, at the core is multilingual learner achievement and being college and career readiness. And then we have 3 priority areas. One is having an asset-based and culturally sustaining mindset. 2 is having meaningful, designated and integrated ELD language learning that works into and from content areas. And finally, 3, partnership, collaboration, and communication to empower families. We also want to acknowledge that empowerment indicates that we give families power as opposed to like them having their own power, but also wanted to highlight that our DLAC families really like the term empower. And so it came from our DLAC roots. To support our vision for multilingual learners, at the end of last year and this year, we developed our own English learner roadmap. This is in alignment with the California Department of Education's English Learner Roadmap that also aligns to the ELD and ELA frameworks. Our roadmap also aligns with our vision for literacy and math in terms of identifying key instructional practices, what students would be doing in the classroom, what teachers would be doing in the classroom, and also what instructional leaders would be doing. Instructional leaders being co-teachers, principals, coaches, and identifying what that looks like. So we have been embedding the roadmap document into our district-wide professional development as a foundational vision and reference tool. And Michelle Ignacio shared earlier the why that we've embedded in all of our professional development. This all renews our vision for English learners. We've also trained almost all of our TK through 5th grade teachers in Fountas and Pinnell classroom because we know that a strong English language arts curriculum and implementation also supports our English learners in developing their English language. We've imagined our structures, committees, and district-wide professional development. So we've had a year-long focus on our English learners and professional development. As you saw earlier, we are extensively disaggregating our data with a focus on our English learners. And then this all allows us to focus and target our long-term English learners to make sure that we are supporting our students who are at risk of becoming long-term English learners, looking at the progress of our newcomers, so we can ensure proficiency for our students and reclassify them. But how we created time and space for our staff members. We're not asking them to do nothing. We're having big requests from them. So as a foundational baseline, we've used our elementary district-wide grade level meetings to have consistent professional development. At both middle schools, we've done reboots of integrated ELD connected to content areas. And we've really used our English learner action teams, our ELATs, at both middle school and elementary school to deepen their understanding of best practices in the classroom so they can in turn train their staffs and support the professional development done by principals and coaches. I said it earlier, but we continually paint and repaint this idea that designated ELD is into and from content. It's not a standalone curriculum. So there was a time when you might do designated ELD instruction and you might learn about colors or seasons, but it wasn't connected to comparing and contrasting what you might be doing in math. And we want it to be connected to content because that way students have on-roads into the content, and then we're working from there. Our teachers have risen to this challenge, so kudos to them. I just can't give them enough props during this time period. The last piece is that we're really working on this all being very student focused. So there's a piece where our teachers are implementing the work. We've embedded time and professional development for them to plan. Sites have also provided follow-up times and grade level meetings or department meetings to plan. This is all in addition to coaching to support the implementation of practices into the classroom from professional development. But we also want it to be student focused. So in the classroom, it's about what the students are doing and not what the teacher's teaching. For example, it's not about what Jeremy's teaching in the classroom, but it is about what Jeremy's students are learning in the classroom. So we want to make sure we shift that because it provides a third point of view. It's not about the teacher, it's about the students in the room. And that might mean that we might have to shift how we teach. Our asset-based and culturally sustaining mindset has been integrated into our instructional practices and also into our progress monitoring, which is connected to our Title III program. So what we've done is we've adjusted our timelines connected to summative LPAC administration. That means that we get our test results back within a year as opposed to over 2 years' time. This also closes the loop with our families. So at DLAP, our family said, I'm jumping ahead, but at DLAP, our family said, wait, how can I talk to my teacher if I get a new teacher every year, but I don't get test results until the next year? So it was great when we were able to say we've adjusted our timelines so that we can increase communication between you and your teacher in that year time period, which will hopefully increase the likelihood of reclassification. We've also coached our coaches and our APs around this process of having asset-based mindsets, because there's a difference between saying, hey, we're doing progress monitoring, let's all get it done, it'll be done soon, versus this is a great opportunity for us to talk about the needs and the assets of our students. And then we can provide you support. Like if you identify that this group of Michelle, Jeff, and John need additional support, then like the coach can help you get there. Do you like that I included your names? We've also been working with various groups on building and deepening ideas of asset-based and cultural mindsets. So for our teachers, again, that's been embedded in all these groups that I just talked about. But we've also done things like embed that into formative assessments, that we look at what students are able to do, not what they can't do, and then bridge the next little lesson accordingly. So if a student knows 5 letter sounds, we don't say, oh, you only know 5. They know 5. And then we build from that 5 to the next 5. We build on what students know. And of course, we launched this year with My Name, My Identity. Our instructional leadership teams and student service teams have been working with New Teacher Center on their own understanding of culture and understanding of students' culture so that they can in turn support their staffs. And then our coaches have also been working with New Teacher Project. This has been exciting work because not only have they been working on understanding culturally relevant teaching in the brain, as well as coaching for equity, They also have cohorts where they practice and go into classrooms and calibrate with each other, as well as like bringing case studies. Like, I'm working with this teacher, here's a challenge for me, how do you help me work through that? In the same way that we want our teachers to engage in coaching, our coaches are engaged in coaching. Another example of our asset-based and culturally sustaining work is that we've been working on windows and mirrors for our students. Windows being that our students can, did I start with mirrors? Mirrors being that students can see themselves in text, and windows being that they can experience other people's cultures. So we build empathy that way. So our librarians, just this last Tuesday, during staff development day, worked on a process of looking at text, like how do we weed out text and how do we bring in more culturally relevant text. At K2, we've developed a pilot of social, emotional, cultural lessons with a number of texts. You can see in our virtual bookshelf with lessons associated with it. So teachers can teach identity lessons, justice lessons. We have an Unpack Your Impact book club that's optional for teachers that are interested in the work. And then of course we have our history social studies pilot with the lens of equity and making sure that we have representation. In terms of our partnership with families, I just want to highlight one piece that we've done this year, which is our DLAC and ELAC work. So again, our DLAC has been focused on empowerment. And what that has looked like is at the first meeting, we asked parents, what do they want? What are their hopes for their children? And what do they want to gain out of DLAC? So they actually are setting the agendas, and like this format, they're asking us for information. So the next topic that we'll be talking about is how to support your child at home when the teacher says, please work with your child at home. We're going to give some specific toolkits for parents so they can bring it back to DLAC. The other piece we've been working on with DLAC and ELAC is making sure that we do have a cadence of meetings. So we have DLAC meetings, DLAC representatives come back to their site, work with their site administrator and school outreach coordinator. Then they have their ELAC meetings where they're bringing back communication, and then that repeats. So it's a set system of communication. Our school outreach liaisons have been instrumental in all this work and working with our families. Wanted to highlight some of the work that we've done this year to build their own capacity and develop the consistency of experience for our Spanish-speaking families at each school site. So what we've done this year is they have a website of resources. They also have a resource binder, so things like immunizations are included, food resources, housing, immigration status. They'll schedule school maps. So each school has their resource binder, and they're also resources shared consistently across the district. Part of that is also having established food resources and a system of them working with each other, so that if I have a food distribution at my site one week, but I don't have it the next week, I can also go to Dawn's school and make sure that our families are always connected. The school outreach assistants right now are working on a newcomer welcome for families, so that it's consistent no matter what school you're coming to, which is like, what's the welcome for our families? Are we walking through a map? Do you have a tour? Do we explain how to talk with your child's teacher? Do we ask you if you need a backpack? Do we ask you if you need any other additional resources? And some of those additional resources this year have been things like, do you need help finding COVID testing? Do you need help finding a COVID vaccine location? And housing resources have been widely asked for this year from our families. Our next steps are just to continue the work that we're doing. It will never stop. But one of the pieces that we're going to work on at the end of February is doing classroom walkthroughs and calibration for our ILT. Like, what are we seeing in classrooms, and then how can we provide feedback in order to support our teachers? We also want to continue to support our teachers in designing lesson plans, so providing the time and the support and the coaching to move from the theoretical into the classroom itself. We do have a culture of coaching is for all, like it's not an opt-in coaching model. And also we want people to want coaching. It is a hot commodity to be able to work with a coach. So we've been working to build that community and that culture. This year, we're also going to be working on developing our newcomer toolkit. So if you have a student come in from another country, what's the first thing that you can do to support them? Like, do we support them with a digital translation device? Does that look different at middle school than elementary school? So how can we identify best practices? This is the time of year where we're planning summer explorations. So we're always looking at our extended learning opportunities and targeting the students that really need the supports in KLS for extended school year. we will be examining our reclassification criteria. So with new guidance from the state for our students with IEPs, that opens the door for us to reclassify students with IEPs. So we'll be looking at that later this year. And then also examining our middle school reclassification criteria. And like I said earlier, this process never ends. We continue to revise. The same parent that told me that this takes time also said,
Las cosas buenas tardan en llegar, pero llegan.
and she said, good things take time, but they come. It's a good indication of how much faith our families have in us, but also, like, I think this was a great example of that. We're working at things, we continue to improve, and we learn from our successes and also our mistakes. With that being said, the next section is board discussion. I will do my best to facilitate the board discussion, which might mean asking clarifying questions, asking for participation from all the board members, and then helping us decide what the next step is. The next steps don't always mean action, but just next steps, which I know you all know.
First, I would ask, are there any clarifying questions that didn't get answered in packet review that anyone wants to go over? Okay, I think Mike sent out some.
Yeah, there's
These
these
same
questions.
questions are here.
Okay,
Thank you for the information too, and all the work you guys did.
Of course. So these are some, oh, Nancy?
Not a question, but a comment. I appreciate the attribution of the quote in the presentation. It gives me an important context.
Nancy,
Can
we can't really hear you, Nancy.
Oh, sorry. I said I appreciate the attribution of the quote that was added from our initial board package. It gives me the context that I needed to understand the impactfulness of those words.
Thanks so much, Nancy.
So just one, you say that a lot of what we saw in the presentations are new implementations you have been doing in the last year, starting in 2020 probably, started the position. But we still haven't been able to see the numbers. They are not in the numbers that we got before because we didn't have the numbers on time.
Yeah, I think there's a question about reclassification numbers
Yes.
specifically. So, yeah, we continue to work on deepening our English learner program and refining. For reclassification last spring, the Summit of LPAC, we administered it in March. All the results came in in June, so over the summer. So we're not able to reclassify students within that year. So they'll be reclassified now. And actually, we're working through all of our winter reclassification paperwork. And we have a number of students who earned a Summit of LPAC for last spring that will reclassify this winter.
So I have a question. Well, I'm just wondering, could we just talk about number one first? Like, how can we as a board change our policies, programs, and procedures to create more socially just policies that are welcoming and are in partnership with our multilingual students and their families? It sounds like the DLAC and ELAC work is like, you know, progressing that way. I think that, you know, in open session, I think Isabel's asked a number of times about anti-bias training. I think, you know, we just have there's other ideas out there. I'm just wondering, like, do you have, it feels like moving to an asset-based shift for this group of learners is more challenging because it's a huge thought shift, right, for everybody. I mean, some people are farther along on the path than others, but I'm wondering if there are things that you've seen out there in your work at the county or other districts are doing that you think would be things that like that we're evaluating right now, or just, right, we can't do it this year because this year is just overwhelming, but are there things out there that you're like, oh, we can't wait till we can try this next?
Yeah, I think our work around, like having like more socially just policies and trying to think of like professional development we've done. We really work to embed that lens in everything that we do. So it's not we're only talking about anti-bias work as much as it is, let's talk about our biases in relationship to our multilingual learners. Or if we're talking about participation in the classroom, that we are, when we're observing, whether that's a coach or a principal, that we are observing and that we acknowledge where we have some biases and where that might come up. So we've been working on having it be embedded in like work that may have been separate before, but it's integrated. So here's an example. In the classroom, I will tell you that a blind spot for me is the student who's very good at playing school. Like they sit there, they look like they're engaged, they nod their head, but they might not be actually engaged, like they don't respond to anything, but they're very compliant and they're good at playing school. And so something that we're working on is identifying those students and also making sure that we know what that student might look like. Like, is that, like, for example, I'll say like a Latina female in the classroom, like that is a student where I'm like, okay, I need to be especially aware of that student because they're good at playing school. And I need to be giving feedback to the teacher that indicates that maybe that student is not participating. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, I'm trying to add examples if they help.
Well, so for the newcomer thing, I know that there's you're talking about a newcomer kit for the student. Are you also talking about it for the families as well?
Yeah, so there are a couple, there are two projects happening at the same time. And actually, can I, how about I hear the question first? And then can I ask board members or?
I'm just wondering because we're just talking like just at a very basic level, being welcoming for families.
Okay, yeah.
And then if you could just tell a little more about that.
For sure. So there's kind of two parallel pieces that are working right now. So one part is how welcoming are we to the families, our newcomer families at the site? And that's predominantly focused on our Spanish speaking families right now. That's our largest speaking population in our multilingual group. But what does that look like in terms of coming to campus, getting a tour, getting a bell schedule, having it explained to you? Right, because we have days that are late starts at middle school. We have early dismissals at elementary for teacher learning days. So are we walking parents through that? Do we tell them how they can communicate with their teacher and like say that we encourage you to reach out to your classroom teacher? And if you'd like support, then the school outreach assistant, am here to help you navigate that. And then also like resource checks. So that's like a simplified version of what the school outreach assistants are working on for our newcomer families. Parallel to that is working on a newcomer toolkit. So that's working on resources for teachers if you have a student that comes in from another country. So I'll say a common practice might be, oh, like, are you a new student from Mexico? You also speak Spanish, but you're a little more English proficient. I'm going to match you up. But like, what's the next step in supporting that student past just like a matched pair? Like at older grades, depending on students' literacy level, when they come in, we can provide translation technology for them and they can utilize that in the classroom. We can also provide some like brick language, like let's go through like basic school supplies and things that I might ask you so that students aren't looking around for cues like, okay, we're all going to the carpet now. Well, the bell is ringing, we're all going to the door and we're going, where are we all going? We're going to brunch. What does that look like?
I think
So
also approaching it, just approaching it systematically so that it's something that all teachers know, of this toolkit, what exists, what's out there, so that they at least know what they can pull from. So I think another example that I have happen a lot is I'll have teachers reach out to me, and most of the time it's dealing with like they're looking for some sort of a solution for, I have this newcomer, can we get, what can I get in their language? So is there a tool? And it might be a lot of times I'll come over and like, I did this recently at Ellis. I came over to a teacher and I sat with a student and luckily it was a Spanish speaker who I speak Spanish. So I chatted a little bit with them, asked, can you read in Spanish, kind of investigating. I'm like, okay, great. Yeah, they can read in Spanish. This is awesome. So I showed them how to translate pages. how do I switch their whole Chromebook so that the language, for at least the time being, was in Spanish, so they can now access. And immediately they were able to then look up the same resources. I also showed them how the different curriculum, because all I think of our curriculum is also in Spanish. Like more and more publishers make it so easy with just a couple clicks to have it over. So that was neat. That could immediately get them access to the curriculum. So that they're not going to fall behind and they can keep up and contribute. They were writing essays in Spanish. There's a Google Translate app. The teacher was able to hold over their essay and actually read it because it just translates straight to English. But as opposed to having teachers, one-on-one, like it was great that she reached out, but not everyone may know to do that. So to put something together where they just know, like, okay, I've got someone that's coming in that may not speak English, they're new to the country, to be able to open a toolkit and say, okay, great, like at least a checklist or something to say, okay, translation, like consider, reaching out. And it could just be like, reach out to Watts and see what's available, like what tools can you get, what other supports might you have for the family, and the bell schedules and other things that are happening in class.
Oh my gosh, we're just gonna change the toolkit, so it says call Watts.
Yeah, not all of them, that was just one small change, yeah.
That's what I heard you say, call Watts.
I think I saw Nancy and then Isabel, you wanted to say, Nancy, did you have something you wanted to add?
I think that I know that we look at standalone programs. And we were talking about anti-bias. But I appreciate it more being engaging in reflective practice rather than taking a course that's standalone and not having the relevance to what am I seeing, what do I need to do? So I appreciate hearing that you're really giving authentic feedback and tools to help teachers look at students differently in their practice and be accepting of and inviting of opportunities to deepen their own practice. So I think that's a great policy that's sustainable rather than a one-time check it off course. Because it's a journey, not a single opportunity of learning.
Thank you, Nancy. Isabel, you want to add something?
Well, I was looking, I think I shared with you guys, last year, one of the trainings from the
Californians
Together. But I think it also came from the California Board, California School Board Association, one of many lectures. They also gave us, they were talking about how they're changing the language, how they're changing the way how we see things. And I think a lot of it has been already put into the plan, specific words as promise and all those things that we were talking about. But they also were talking about making a road, what they call a roadmap. And I think I shared before an example of another local school district who took that format and pull out what they're doing in a way to make everybody aware and on the same boat, like all these practices. And I was wondering, I don't know if you guys check it, if you think it's a good tool to help us put it more in the center, more aware, refine tools, or I don't know if you have waited, if that's a tool, an extra tool that we can use to help the process and to help adding things. They have, it's a little literature, but one of them is like the toolkit and, put values in all the way how we do things. This is more important, this might be, but not as important as the other one, and kind of put it in the center, all these policies and goals. And at the end, the language is similar to the LCAP, is the goals and how you assess each of the goals. But it's not, it's not completely different. I think it's another way to pull it out and put it at the center in a way.
Yeah, so the California Together, they're a great advocacy group for our multilingual students, and they did work and contribute to the California Roadmap for English Learners. We actually use that as a foundational document to drive our own roadmap for English learners. Ours is just a synthesized version. We know that, like, of course, like the primary source is a great resource. And we also want to make it accessible for our teachers. So if we have these one pagers that kind of outline what we want for our students in literacy, what we want for our students in math, what we want for our students that are multilingual learners, then they can look at it and it gives them a quick reference guide. And then our professional development links to like these bigger resources. In terms of like prioritizing areas, that's also how we developed our vision for multilingual learners. We derive it from the roadmap. And we also use resources from, for example, Color in Colorado, Yale Elevate, and we're looking to partner with Stanford next year in designing designated ELD lessons with Jeff Swears and Steve Weiss. They've been running cohorts they ran a cohort with districts this last year as a pilot to help refine practices and policies.
So is that Yale roadmap on our district website, or is it accessible only by staff right now?
It is accessible by staff right now, and we've been in the process of revising and updating our externally facing website.
Did anyone else want to talk about number one? I definitely want to make sure we touch on number two, but do you have anything you wanted to talk about, Michelle?
Well, so this isn't specifically maybe answering that question, but it was just, I wanted to follow up, Jonathan, I'll let you finish your note.
Oh, yeah.
No, you can finish your note. That's how you're writing. When you were like sharing that example, right? I loved it, and I love the idea of a resource kit, right? But then I was thinking about, so many teachers are feeling overwhelmed, right? So I'm overwhelmed right now. So I was putting myself as a teacher, like I have a new student come in, I'm feeling so overwhelmed. Even the idea of like looking at this toolkit to understand the toolkit to help this kid, because I already have 50 other things I have to do. So I'm like, how do we like not just have, I know we talk about this all the time and there's not easy solutions, but are we thinking about like, how do we get to all the teachers to use it, right? Not just 10% of the teachers, or I don't know, like that was just kind of what was going through my head. And I think a lot of, I guess how it does connect to the question one is, I think this is true of all of the things, which is why we haven't solved it, right? Is we might have a great idea or we might have a best practice, but unless we are all doing it, we're not going to really see results, right? Anyway, that's just what kind of was like going through my head. I don't think it's, maybe it's not you can answer or have thoughts, but just
I think one advantage that we have in this situation is that it's so desired, I think, to have that, and teachers want that. So if there's a real want for it, like it'll be something that they will look for, I think.
Can I also say, Michelle, I think part of it too is not just like not having like that be a resource, but having that be a resource that points them to things too, like, and having resources available on the school site that they can use. Like I feel like.
We do that and it doesn't always get used, right? Like SEL, we have, right? So I'm not saying we don't do it. This is great. I want us to be mindful of that general problem.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And like I try to think of examples where we did roll something out and it was frequently used, and and sometimes we were surprised, like, oh my gosh, this is really beneficial, and they're on it. So one of those things that I can think of was during the pandemic, because there was such a need for resources on tech training and just quick videos showing how to do all the instructional practices that have now switched to digital. So it was like the need was there. So when we created a website, immediately people went to it, and it became this resource that they knew, they relied on, they bookmarked, and they kept going back, which also encouraged us to continue to post on it because you need to keep it going. Like you need to keep the momentum, the fire underneath there, and saying like, yes, this is a place that you can always go to.
Yeah.
So
and
that's
then you're seeing how they're using it, what parts they like, right? So then you can whatever toolkit it is for whatever topic.
And we talk about this a lot in our department meeting with our TOSAs too, is like, how do we house the PD and how do we continue the buzz around it? Because there's like, we have all of these great resources from all the PDs that we've done, slides, movies, things like that. So a couple of things that they have started doing is like a lot of them have put just like little things like in their signature line, they have the website booked. And they do the same with like coaching. They want people reaching out to coaching. So a lot of them have put a link to like schedule, appointments. So it's those little,
Making it more accessible.
we have to keep remembering and reminding ourselves, like, okay, we can put it like in our principal bulletin. Okay, remember to put it in there. If there's a newsletter that goes out to sites or to teachers, we have to remember, put it in there, mention it. Because it's easy with so much going on, I think. Like I definitely fall into that. You can be so busy doing other things, you forget about like maintaining some of these things that you want everyone to be doing.
And we work from a systems perspective, which is like, it's the student need that drives the change in practice, right? So you have a student, and then if you have a teacher that's like, I don't know where to start, or this feels a little overwhelming, that's where the coaching can take place. And that's where the partnership between the coach and the administrator opens the door for that teacher. Like, this is a priority area. Let's integrate that into your goal work. Coach, please support in like getting that practice into place. Let's set a first small target, and then work from there, because our teachers also have assets and we also want to set measurable targets for them. And then that's where the coach references like the PD that's in the website, and then it's linked in the professional development. So it's multiple access points, and it's all a web to support this teacher and supporting the student.
And that is for an internal site for the teachers inside our systems. Is there, or maybe there is already something like a special website that has similar resources for the families inside our website as a district, that we can also refer everybody or all the families that are ELD and everybody who is, like the startup kit, and everything in an easy way, so they can, download and, see the same resources and even following up whatever the kids are doing, so they can check at home in both languages, something. All the things that you say, but, easy for them at home to do in the evening.
Like a family resource hub, essentially.
Yeah.
For English learner families.
I think that unfortunately we are coming to the close of our hour, and I'm really disappointed because I feel like
We just got to one.
we just got to one, and I feel like,
Well, do you want to take 15 minutes and try to address number 2?
Yeah,
I can
I
work
I
it
think
for
we
you.
should.
I think
Yeah.
so too. So
So I don't know if you want to prioritize 2 or 3. Also, I have a vested interest in like a quick, if you just want to rattle off number 3, some of those points, because I would love, like, I'm also
I
interested in
think
3.
for me, I mean,
Or if you follow up or put it in some other
Yeah.
form.
Why don't we do 5 minutes on number 3 and then
I
10
would
minutes on
rather
number
do
2?
number
2,
I
yeah.
would really, because I feel like, well, go ahead.
Number 3, you can send in an email later on the
Right,
points
I
for
mean,
David. Yeah.
It's pretty much self-evident.
Yep.
Right? I mean, number 2 is just so, we only have 2 middle schools, so instantly, if we start talking about them, it's like, oh, we're comparing them, and that means we like one more than the other, or whatever. So I just want to like just say, like, and like this is a board discussion, but we just have to be real about it. And so if like we've said middle school alignment over and over, and for me it was real interesting that there's pretty much the same number of Spanish-speaking English learners at both middle schools, but the services for them are widely different. The schedules are widely different. And, like, I don't know, I would just really like to hear what the rest of the board is thinking on it, or like for how we move forward, because I've heard like from the district, like, well, we don't understand what you mean, middle school alignment is too broad. So I mean, I honestly have said so many times, like, it can't be that just because you live in one zip code, that the level of service that our district provides is so radically different for the student. Even if the overall population may or may not need that specific service or that specific schedule or whatever.
Yeah, and I think we heard before here, or probably was in the DELE, that in such environment, the kids can, as you say, they look like they're doing well, or they can hide. You can hide because the school is bigger, even though it's the same number of kids, they just hide and are transparent. We see over them, are invisible, and they don't get what they need. And then we are not just getting kids in middle school that are long-term English learners, but then we send them to high school, which is terrible.
So I guess when I'm talking about, when I think about our middle schools, I think that we have 3 programs, not just, we have 2 campuses, but we have 3 middle school programs. So I want to highlight the fact that we are pushing out on our Juntos program at CMS. So I want to, when I'm thinking about middle school alignment, I'm thinking about middle school program alignment that would be inclusive of experiences that our Juntos students are also receiving.
But I believe that the kids at Juntos are getting the same services that CMS has. I mean, they are everything, all the extra things and programs and benefits that the kids at CMS that are getting are there for the Juntos. And do we have a number of English learners in the Juntos program? I thought they were already coming from the San Miguel and were proficient in both.
There is some long-term English learners in there as well, a handful. Jeff, you turned your mic on.
I was waiting for everybody.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I was gonna say, you know, we do have 2 middle schools. I hear what you're saying, and I agree with it. But then I also think that we have some opportunities with having different communities and reaching out to different communities and different needs. I was actually mentioning today to Dr. Gallagher about, I mean, it kind of touches on number 3 as well. I mean, in a weird way. But I don't see why we can't start offering our students high school credits in middle school for the more advanced, like the Juntos program or the native speaker Spanish students. You know, and I think that might open the door to other opportunities later on. But I've seen it in other. You usually see this kind of thing in a unified school district. It's easier, but I don't see why we couldn't do it. And that we would also be, kind of goes along with our school of choice. You know, I mean, I think that's a program that might fit well at CMS. I mean, not necessarily at SNS at this point, but if you are interested in it, you could go. My concern is maybe a little more political. I think if you're an if you start demonstrating LTL concerns, I think that really becomes highlighted or really exacerbates in middle school, because now and I think sometimes the families need to become educated on how do you advocate for your child, how do you advocate in these ELAC and DLAC, because I think in high school sometimes it can be a little bit of a checkbox. We had a meeting, oh, we're going to tell you, you know, and I think, how do you talk to 5 or 6 different teachers? What do you know? What can you expect when you want to advocate for your child? How do you know when you're not receiving the services, and what do you do when you're not receiving the services? I think these are things we can also practice in middle school, you know, that help the families develop themselves as, you know, ultimately like community leaders, but also child advocates that go forward to high school. I guess that's a question as well, because I don't know how much we're doing on that. I think there's always this intention to do it. But you were saying be real. I think it's time to be real. I think sometimes you know, we put a lot of effort to try to get the families together into the ELAC meeting, but then there's, you know, a lot of effort just to tell them information instead of hearing from them. And I think that's the direction we want to go. So it'd be great if we went there, but how do we prepare them to expect the same thing 9 to 12?
And I also feel like, you know, when I'm talking about services, I mean, I'm talking about not just like electives, but like social services, outreach services. I mean, SMS still does not have a social worker, and they have only one outreach coordinator who speaks Spanish. Like, it is just really for 1,000 children and, 100 and whatever, the same number of English learners, long-term English learners that are at CMS. And I understand that like staffing is hard and it's like incredibly hard to find the right people, but I just feel like the schedule is so different, I think one middle school has, additional support for counseling and office hours. They have classes for long-term English learners, and the other middle school says, well, it's on the teacher. The teacher's doing designated ELD. Well, it's just very frustrating to see that the minority of students is just, I just feel that they're just, we're not
adequately servicing them.
What?
We're not adequately servicing them.
I don't believe that we are, because I feel like the will of the majority is like, the majority is driving the boat there. And, what's funny is that I was in a Sunnyvale Education Foundation meeting, and one of the parents from CMS, whose child is not in the English learner program, right? She was raving about, oh, we get 2 late starts and my kid has all these multiple electives and, it's so interesting. They're taking all these other classes. So like having the schedule that's really set up to support this larger proportion of English learner community is benefiting like everybody there. So I just feel like it's very, the idea is that because they're in this school with overall better test scores, that's the advantage for them, right? But if you look at their day, they're probably not getting as many services as they could at the other school where there's a higher proportion of kids with similar needs, right? And you could say, well, that's just the way it is, but it doesn't have to be that way. And so I'm just wondering if the board is interested in doing some more alignment that way. I don't particularly need the schedules to be identical or, exactly the same, because I know that there's a Juntos program at CMS, so they have, extra periods and they have a lot of things going on for a small middle school. But I'm just wondering if the rest of the board is in agreement on that there should be more services.
I think that's a really important question,
Yeah.
because as I was listening to the presentation, the focus on alignment has been in instruction and the quality of instruction and the pedagogy, right? Which is, I think we all would agree that's critical.
Yeah.
You're mentioning, that's why this is such a good question, like a different kind of alignment, which is also important. I think Tasha has maybe a little bit of clarification that is minor, but to your point, but it would be important, I think, for us to hear from the board if that, support services is also, I think I know what the answer is going to be, an important alignment as well. And how you would know if it's aligned, because like you said, the schedules might be a little bit different, but like what's the outcome and what's the support that's available?
Yeah, like does the student have access to office hours? Does the student have access to a full hour of or 45 minutes of targeted intervention from a teacher with a degree that supports that and the training? Does the child get electives? Does the child have access to all the many things? I think CMS has so many things, I don't even know what they have anymore. They're just constantly revamping, so.
So Bridget, I think the space that I'm struggling with is actually still understanding what your idea of alignment is. So I don't think having the schools be exactly the same, which I don't know if this is what you're saying, but sometimes when you're talking, that's what it sounds like to me.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes when you're talking, that's what I feel like you're describing, and that whether that's what you mean or not, that's what I'm hearing, right? And I don't want that necessarily. Like they don't need to look exactly the same, But I do think that idea of the level, like support, right? Like one of our schools is probably getting more support for the EL students than the other school. And so making sure the supports are more aligned, like I would agree with that piece. But breaking down very specific details, that sounds like you're
Yeah,
something
it's
doing.
just an example.
Yeah,
Like, I don't even know, that's what I'm saying. That's exactly what, you said exactly what I mean.
okay.
And I don't
That's
just
that's
mean
where I'm
support for the
a little
student,
hesitant on, is like, I
But
don't want.
that's not the way it's been
but it's not
coming
just for
forward.
it's not just for the students, it's also for the staff, like who's, like, if you're a teacher, you need to refer them somewhere. If you have nowhere to refer them to, then it really is all on you, you know? So I think that the support services.
Support services for the students and the staff who are supporting the students.
That's right.
Nancy, were you gonna say something?
Yeah, back to my point, it's making, the equity is in support services for students, no matter where they are.
Is that clear? Everyone agree?
Is that, did I hear,
That-
am I hearing what you're saying?
Yes.
And
Okay.
this year has been a very challenging year for students at SMS, which there have been a lot of, I don't know, tension with the students, fights, all these other things that you already have a space when that happened in CMS, which is a strike. And then you also have all these support rooms. I think it's like they have the psychologists, they have a whole wing and a whole space outside. When they go and the kids can decompress if they feel anxious, or all those things are, for example, I bet there are other things. There are basic services that the kids in one side have and not in the other. Not just talking about, you know, how wonderful that the program that left the flex fun classes and all these new spaces, they don't have to be copied in CMS, sorry, in SMS if they really don't like it, but that's one example of a lot of fun things that came out, and they're supporting the students and making their day more fun. There might be a different formula for the other side, but that's just one of many examples of services that the kids are getting on one side and is not equal in the other side.
And Isabel, I thought you said something important there that connects to something Jeff said, which is you want to ask what they also want, right? So sometimes we can look at programs and say, oh, we should replicate programs. And there's also a piece, I'm thinking about middle schoolers who sometimes like things and sometimes don't, but also seeing like what are the services that they do access, like what is beneficial to them. So that way we can scale, as opposed to saying, yes, we want to have parallel at both sites.
And I would also offer, a next step that we probably need to do is look at the outcomes that we want and begin measuring to see if we're achieving the outcomes. So like there's a perception that there's a set of services at one school, and I won't pick on one or the other. And that may be true, but what are the outcomes that we're getting? So that's ultimately what we want to have. So like if we align to the school that wasn't getting as, I'm not suggesting,
Yeah, no.
but if we align to the school that wasn't getting as good outcomes, that wouldn't be a good idea either.
I was thinking that same thing, is not just that we want it aligned, right? Like, because it might sound like something's really great, but if we're not seeing results, then maybe it's not as great, right? So
Well,
I was thinking that thing.
Well, and I think that we are seeing results, like we are getting kids reclassified, we are seeing results, but it's at what cost, and like what is the road to get there, right? Like, so if it's all on the teacher versus having other support systems in place, you know. I mean, I don't know, it just seems like, I agree with you, and yet, like right now, if there's just one, like if it's, I mean, I would really like to talk about it some more, like after you guys do some thinking. I just think, I'm so thrilled that the board is aligned, that services is part of the equity equation. So I think that's awesome for clarification. I'm so excited.
I just have one
Yeah.
quick, I think another piece, right, is like being aware of culture, right, which I think that also, right, like if you have a greater percentage of the EL students, right, like that's going to create a different culture that maybe makes it easier, right, like because it's a higher number, but when it's a smaller number, how do we help that culture say, hey, like, even though this is a smaller percentage of our school, this is still a large number of our students that we need to do, like, take care of. I don't know, so just that, not that you need to make the cultures exactly the same, but that cultural kind of idea
It's a
about
challenge.
it as well.
Like having PTA meetings with translation for 20 to 30% of the people. Like, I mean, that's things like that.
Real
Or
quick,
school
number
meeting.
3, because I've been asking about this, since I've been on the board.
What is what, sorry?
Number 3,
Number 3. Oh,
Yeah.
I just want to know how our kids are doing in the Fremont Union High School District.
Yeah.
I don't want to look at their data that combines with all their feeder districts. I just want to know ours.
They got a new data person, and I was able to get like one data set, I think at the beginning of last year. And then now that we have Jamie Bradley, who used to be over there and understands all their coding of courses and like has a really good understanding, I brought that data set. It's like old data now, but it was really fun. I brought it over to him because what I had done is I had actually looked at graduation rate, GPA, and then I backward mapped it, and I looked at, okay, so if they took which course in middle school, where did they end up? What GPA, what was their graduation rate? It's super exciting, yeah, because this is the first time I've ever actually gotten a data set. Like, we send them data regularly to help inform placement and different things like that, but we rarely get it back. But they got a new data person that has been very open with sharing these things. So,
And I would
yeah,
really
when I
like,
saw that was a request, I got kind of excited, like, yes, this gives me another reason to reach out and get that.
and both those high schools, both Homestead and Fremont, had some kids who were dropped out or were pushed out, 29 at one and 11 at the other. And I would love to know if there are students.
Yeah, that's good info.
Not that I don't care if there are any of these students.
And hopefully as COVID settles, we can not, I mean, maybe school, but like staff, like have like the high school and our district, like not just share data, but then talk with each other,
Yeah.
right? Like hopefully, that's like a back burner thing that we can pick up in the next year, hopefully.
Pushed out, you've been watching Dr. Victoria.
I've been watching, I have to watch this stuff. Well, okay, so just thank you. I mean, I think this is a great discussion. I'm so glad we had the hour and 15, 20 minutes to do it. So I really appreciate it. And I just appreciate all the work that went into this immense presentation to give us all this like conversation, time for conversation. So.
And I don't think we recognize Kay Lee, who's
Hi.
another coordinator in the instruction department, and she's new, and she's also wonderful.
Great.
Thank
Great.
you.
Well, thank you as
Thank you for
well.
being here.
So, so thanks for all your work and everything. And I would love to take just a short recess before we move on to the next item. Would that be okay?
Sounds good.
Okay, so the board is gonna adjourn. Thank you. What?
Recess.
Not adjourned.
Oh, we're gonna recess. What do I say? We're gonna take a recess?
Take a recess.
Okay, we're gonna take a little recess. Sounds fun.
When are we supposed to be back?
Do we have a play? We get a play.
Okay, so we'll take
When are we supposed to be back?
7:25. Thank you.
That's 7 minutes.
Oh, that's 7 minutes.
Well, that's good.
Get Jonathan to set
And
something
then
up.
like on the 3,000 one, like every week money just technically starts going on.
Oh, yeah, like a.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Grant, make that happen.
Okay, I think we're just, well, she's off. I think we're just waiting for Nancy for a minute. We'll give her one more minute.
Should we do the Spanish announcement again?
Yes. Why don't I start? Okay, I'm gonna reconvene this, we're reconvening this regular board meeting of the Board of Education. I see almost all of us present, we're just waiting one moment for Nancy. While we do, I want to remind everyone that there are translation services available in Spanish. Could you give the announcement one more time in Spanish?
Jesus, can you easily pull her back into the regular one to make the announcement or not?
No.
She has to
Okay.
do it herself.
Okay.
Once the interpretation goes there, she'll do it.
Okay, if you're interested in hearing this, in hearing a Spanish interpretation of this meeting, you can click on the world icon and you'll be able to hear the interpreter. You can select the language. Just a reminder also, this meeting is being recorded. We're on to item number 4, comments from the board and superintendent. Jeff, do you want to start?
I don't have any comments.
Okay. Michelle?
I don't really have many comments either. I think most of you know my life's been really crazy the last few weeks. But we're just getting through one day at a time, and we, for those who don't know, we kind of put together a little, from behalf of the board and superintendent, we put together little care packages that we sent to all the school sites and the district office, just because we know this time is a super crazy time and want everyone to know that we appreciate everyone's work and that we're thinking about everyone during this crazy time that we were not expecting to be so crazy, I think. And that's it.
Great, thank you. Isabel?
Well, I think, well, we didn't have the comments of what we've done in the last session we had last week, but we did have since last meeting in December, we had, well, we did talk about the EAC is education,
The AEC.
yes, that we had in December. I think after that meeting, we have the DLAC. I don't know if I already talked about that. I don't think I did last meeting. There was one student committee and FMPC, which is the master planning. I think that Saturday after the meeting, we have the education foundation meeting. Then I have in my schedule that we had a citizen oversight the Monday after that.
Well, that's back in
after that
December,
meeting.
yeah.
Yeah, and then I think I was looking for, but I remember going, there was here the meeting for the wellness that they closed in December, like also the week after we had our last meeting. So all the committees met from that to here. I went through all of those and nothing particularly shocking to reveal about them.
Great.
Everybody is moving forward.
And Isabel, you are a candidate?
Oh, yes, yes. And Bridget nominated me. I went for it for the California Latinos School Board Association. And everybody, I think all of us are members, so everybody can vote for if we want me to represent us. It's a statewide association, and it will start on Monday until next Sunday.
The voting starts Monday.
Yes, And
Will we get an
we
email
will
about
all get an email, and I heard that it's gonna be a Google form that you can use, fill out from your phone or your computer at any time. And there are 4 positions open, so you get to vote for 4 people, and there are 6 candidates. Me
Good
one.
luck.
I looked at all the candidates and I decided that you were the best one.
That's
Of
the
course.
Yeah.
I support that.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, so I sent I think I sent all my board comments or activities in. I did want to say a couple of things. The Hoffman Awards banquet has moved again because we're trying to get on Marianne DeWan's calendar, the county superintendent. And so it's Wednesday, May 11th. And it'll be, so it's a Wednesday evening. I think it's 6.
Is this the last
6 to
time it's
9
getting
p.m.
moved?
Yes, because I'm putting down the deposit and we're making the reservation. So that's it. No more moving. And then also, I sent out a note, like I saved the date already, but the registration's now out and Jesus forwarded it to everyone. So you should register if you're available over our February break to come for the Saturday, the February 26th in the morning, the SCCSBA Ledge Brunch, which lots of people are going to be attending because it's an election year. So they're all really interested in talking to us. So it's 9 to 11 a.m., February the 26th, and that'll be on Zoom, sadly. And then the last thing, this month was at the meeting with the county about the budget this morning, online, and I think you were on there too. I saw your question in the chat. And she said, oh, it's a school board and elected officials school board appreciation month, trustee appreciation month. So thank you everyone for your service. That's great. And it's challenging in a normal year. It's been a challenging year. And thanks to the staff for supporting all of us and the district and everything. So and thanks to Michelle for the great idea to go out to the sites, and Isabel for helping deliver, and everyone else for cheering on, because I know that it brightened their day to, sometimes if you can't do anything because the stress level is so high, you can give someone a cookie or a hand sanitizer, which is basically what they got. Okay, so that's my update.
Nancy.
Oh, Nancy, you're back. Hi.
Yes, sorry. So I sent in most of my activities to Jesus, but I did want to let you know that I'm very excited in the legislative action component for the Santa Clara County School Boards Association, that I've volunteered to be a chair for the early learning subcommittee. And that aligns really well with my community activity of being on the local planning council for Santa Clara County, which oversees a lot of workforce monies for early childhood ed that we receive in the county from the state. And thank you for your support while I continue to be remote, and I'm hoping that numbers go down so I can come on back real soon.
Oh, and that reminds me, Ledge Action is going to have 2, possibly 3 committees that anyone who's a trustee and other people, superintendents, I think assistant superintendents, anyone who's really interested can volunteer to work on, because it's a policy incubator and coming up with stories. So when we go out and talk to legislators about what's happening on the budget and what's happening for their legislative proposals, we can go in and give them great examples and hammer it out. So if you, so far we have special education, early childhood learning, and possibly multilingual families. We just need someone to chair that from our team. Yay, so feel free to volunteer.
Okay, a couple of quick announcements. First of all, you received an email this morning from Jeremy about staff testing that's available for Board of Education members. So if you would like to be We have weekly testing, and if you'd like to participate in that, that information is in the email. If you have questions, you can contact Jeremy, and we can include you in that. Also on Tuesday during our staff development day, we did Test Fest. Is that what we call it, Jeremy? Test Fest. And we tested over 400 staff members, which is wonderful. We really wanted to get like another baseline. It was a great opportunity. People were excited. I mean, people participated. Yeah, I don't know. And you know, we were a little concerned if you test a lot of people, like what are the numbers going to be? And they were relatively low, certainly lower than the county average, which is good. We did identify some people, which kept us safer heading back into school after the long 4-day weekend for kids. So that's good. Reminder that the Equity Summit is still planned for February 15th. We're a little worried the last couple of weeks, but it looks like COVID is getting better, and it looks like we're going to be able to do that. And so we're working with our principals to put together the participant list. Next announcement is about district-wide staff appreciation. Just want to let you know that the staff have got lots of really positive feedback for that. You know, I guess it's a little thing, but it's a big thing, if that makes sense, right? People just like to know that they're being thought of and appreciated, and so that was great to do it district-wide. I'm also, there's kind of a little group of superintendents in the county that are forming to look at what is the vision for the involvement in school districts long-term related to COVID. And there's a lot of concern about that. And we see this as a potential for advocacy. You know, I think there's been a push that schools should stay open, and then I think in some parts in the public health community, that's the end. And we've certainly seen in the last 2 weeks before that, but it was like really underscored in the last 2-3 weeks, that schools just merely being open isn't enough. Our primary function is education, teaching and learning. It is not diagnosing illness. Now, in a crisis, we will do that. Of course we will. Everyone pitches in. But long term, there is some concern that there might be an expectation in the community that becomes an expectation of schools. And so we're kind of banding together. We're going to put together some advocacy. We're probably going to lean into CSBA, our local representatives to just really clarify what is the role of school districts with this idea of living with COVID. Because there's an impact on teaching and learning when our emphasis is on testing kids and diagnosing illness and writing letters to parents about who's positive and who's not. Happy to work with public health. And kind of like, I'll stop in a second here. For example, with the vaccinations, it's a good way to look at it. Vaccinations, they put together clinics, we welcome them on campus, we even promote it, they do the work. That's the work of public health. So we see that as a long-term vision for living with COVID. So we can be focused, our teachers, our principals, our support staff can focus on teaching and learning. I think that's really important. And so the last thing, which is fun, is Brent Burns. If you can come up to the podium here. He is going to, he's has a new role, as you know, he's our director of operations and facilities. And he's put together a new team, and he's going to introduce his team to you today. So go ahead, Matt.
Good evening, board. It is with great honor that I get to introduce the two newest management members to the operations department. We have Myron Kong and Jeff Engel. Myron Kong is going to be the capital projects manager. He will be currently assisting me in all of the construction projects that we have in development, as well as the ongoing construction project with Ellis. I am extremely happy to have Myron on and to start alleviating some of the workload from Ellis. His experience and background is in design. He's worked for ADIS Architects actually for 8 years, I believe 2004 to 12.
Sounds about right.
Okay, we'll go with that. And then his experience with Summit Charter Schools in the last 6 years, developing some of their facilities throughout California, is going to be a perfect experience for him to transition into Sunnyvale, and I am very, very excited to have him on board. The second is Jeff Engel, who is now the operations manager. I believe the title is Manager of Operations Services.
He transitioned into that role in mid-December, and just like the rest of the teaching staff across the district, operations wasn't exempt from the hits from COVID. Jeff has rolled with the punches and kind of seamlessly transitioned into his role. He has been integral into the deployment of all the tests, supplies that need to go to the sites to maintain sites being open. And he's also been able to somehow navigate custodians being out, transportation personnel being out, and we've kept the operations side of the house going throughout this time. So thank you both for what you've done. I'm looking forward to working with them as we move on here. And yeah, happy to introduce them both.
I'll also add Myron is a product of Sunnyvale School District. He graduated of Sunnyvale Middle School, is that right?
That's right.
That's right. So congratulations, welcome back.
Happy to be here.
Thank you. So now we're on to item number 5, comments from the Sunnyvale Education Association. If there's an official representative online, please use your raised hand if you wish to speak. Okay, seeing none. Item number 6, comments from the California School Employees Association. If there's an official representative online, please use the raised hand feature if you wish to speak. Okay, now we're on to item number 7, comments from the public. This is the time to comment about things that are not on the agenda. This portion of the agenda provides an opportunity for members of the public to directly address the governing board on any item of interest to the public. However, provisions of the Brown Act Government Code 549, 542, and A and point 3 preclude any action being taken on any item not appearing on the posted agenda. Time limits allocated to public testimony are 3 minutes per person and 20 minutes for public comments. Speakers are asked to give their name and affiliation so that an accurate record is reflected in the minutes. As a reminder for our board bylaw 9323, the board shall not prohibit public criticism of its policies, procedures, programs, services, acts, or omissions. During public comment, we encourage speakers to discuss issues with civility, to treat people whose opinions differ from their own with respect, and to focus on ideas, policies, and values. If you'd like to speak, please raise your hand using the raised hand feature. No? Okay. Now we're on to presentations. 8A. Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources, Jeremy Nishihara, on the presentation of enrollment projections for 22-23. Mr. Nishihara.
Thank you. Is this on? There we go. Can you hear me? Yep. Excellent. All right, we're going to try something. I'm working with Jesus, and I'm going to try to do a kind of a more dynamic presentation. So give me 1 second to try to connect to the Zoom so I can project. And this worked a little while ago, so hopefully it'll work again. All right, how are we looking? Nancy, can you see that? Outstanding. All right. Good evening, board, and Nancy, and where you are. I'm pleased to bring to you tonight the student enrollment projection update for 22 and the 23 school year. Just as a recap for the audience and anyone listening online, this is an annual report that we bring every year. And about 3 or 4 years ago, we changed the format of this, where we really go and dive into what the numbers mean to the district. Previous to that, it was like a deep dive into the report, which is good, but again, it's based off of a lot of assumptions. So we really wanted to, I think Dr. Gallagher 4 years ago said, let's kind of flip that around and really focus on some of the numbers and the impact on the district and enrollment and trends. It is important to note that the demographer's report was included, and again, it is based on a sound methodology. And to be honest, the more important thing is that it's we've been using the same demographer from year to year, so the assumptions are the same, so we're at least getting, common trends across the board. I do remind you, though, it is a estimate, it is what is that called, a projection. So approximately right and exactly wrong is where we're landing. Like it's always going to be a variance on and off, but it is good information that we use to inform our planning. Lastly, this year is only a 1-year lookout. We discussed, the demographer and I discussed this earlier this fall. There's still a lot of uncertainty surrounding the COVID, the impact on COVID in our community. So we decided to take a 1-year snapshot and then jump ahead with, usually it's a 3-year projection, because we felt that anything 2 years out would be just a little too vague. So tonight is just the 1 year. So in that regard, it'll be 66% shorter presentation. All right. So these are the 3 major highlights from the report. So our continued declining enrollment, our districts continue to decline enrollment, but the trend is ending. And so you'll notice that in some of the data I'll present shortly, where the decline is there, but it starts to flatten out. The reason for this is our large graduating 8th grade classes, and I have talked about this in the past, where we have I guess what we would call a structural deficit, right? The incoming K classes are smaller than the outgoing 8th grade, right? Because when you look at declining enrollment as an aggregate, people tend to think, oh, we're losing students, but it also could be structural, where in general, the outgoing 8th grade classes are larger than the incoming K. So that was true in the 18 and 19 school year, and the extreme overall reduction since 2019 is clearly pandemic related, and is unlikely to continue as the severity of the pandemic's health impacts lessen. So your question is, how to, on what basis is that being made? To oversimplify, birth rates were down from 5 years ago through the trend, right? Because again, when the pandemic hit, uncertainty, birth rates tend to decline. However, the housing developments that the demographer also tracks has also kind of maintained on track. So those two things are kind of offsetting, and so which is why he's leading his conclusion is that our declining enrollment, which is countywide, will continue, but will then continue to flatten, or will lessen once the pandemic's impact lessens. And then next year, the projection is a decline of around 72 students. And if not for the expansion of transitional kindergarten, because as a reminder, next year's expansion of TK will include now birthdays of January and February. We would have been down another 40 or 38 students on top of that. So the net is 72. So think about it. We're going to lose 110 for the projection, but we're going to be picking up 38 roughly new students just because of the expansion of TK. So those are the 3 major highlights. And I know there's a lot of words in it, so I tend to try to present some graphic images just to help have the numbers land a little bit better. All right. So this is one modality for learners. This is the graph data chart. So this shows basically the past trailing 5 years of actual enrollment. And then these are the past 2 years here. And so I want to draw your attention to just the overall decline. So in 2015, we had 6,641 TK to 8th grade students. At the end of last year, we had 5,957. That's the end of the 2021 school year. The 2021-2022 school year, our actual enrollment at the time of this, which is the October CBED snapshot, was 5,482 students. So the 2 numbers I wanted to highlight here are this year's TK classes was actually pretty small, right, from the prior year. We had 123 the year before. This year, 2021, we had 85 TK students. That is projected to go, next year's TK class is projected to be 155, and I want you to just remember that number when we talk about next steps, because we are trying to use this data to plan for the implementation of that program. So, I'm sorry, I should go back. The 85 was the demographer's projection for this year's TK. The actual number is 87, so that's pretty good. I know I said it's approximately right, but he almost got it exactly right. On the right side, as you can see, there was a dramatic, basically 2-year decline, right? So from 2019 to 2020, we lost roughly 500 students. So from 6439 to 5957. And then again, from last year to this year, we experienced another steep decline, loss of another 500 students. However, as you can see, that's slated to kind of flatten out, where next year's projection is to be down another only 72 students district-wide, TK to 8. And then he gives that 2% plus or minus down here. So our enrollment will be somewhere between 5,300 and 5,520. All right. So this is our detailed enrollment trend, and we take 5 snapshots of enrollment per year. And we go back to the 2015, 2016 because it's kind of flat, right? As you can see, we've been kind of trailing along. We were ticking up, and then this is right here is the start of our decline, because the end of the 1920 school year was when we entered into shutdown. This was last year, right? So we're continuing to see a decrease in enrollment, and then this is that second 500. So this one was not projected, all right, in the prior demographers report. We think that a little bit of this initial decline was due to 2 years worth of just people's lives circumstances changing. We experienced that a little bit on the employment side, where everyone just kind of froze, right? Like by the end of last year, though, people were making their life decisions. We received, kind of, I don't want to say double retirements, but just 2 years worth of retirements, 2 years of movement, because everyone was trying to just hold themselves through. Our best guess is that that was kind of in general the same trend for individuals living in the community as well, and with enrollment in school. You can see also that there was this kind of little uptick. And so let's drill down even further, because I know the board would definitely want to see what do these 3 dots represent. So basically these 3 dots represent the first 4 months of the school year. So let's drill down. So this one is the elementary view from August through January. Okay, so again, this is kind of flat, so the graph is not super dynamic, but the things I want to kind of show is that we started off kind of low. And I think we folks were actually seeing if the conditions of what we were going to actually reopen in person, B, if it was quote unquote safe. So we saw this kind of like low enrollment when we first started. So let me go back a little bit, I apologize. We were down to this number here, right? We were down, I'm trying to get this queue up here. At the 10-day count, our enrollment was 5,417 students. And then over that, August, September, October, we gained actually about 75 students. And we think that's just because people were just like, oh, they're open, they're coming back in. And so, and then now it's starting to tick down, which is actually a normal trend, but I'll get to that in a little bit. So this is the elementary snapshot of those first 4 months of the school year. The 2 areas I want you to see is a little bit of that, the fact that it starts low and starts to track up. And that happens to be Bishop and Lakewood. Those are traditional trends. I remember Pam Chang would always say, Jeremy, like when we were talking staffing, just wait till after Memorial Day, and then so that trend tends to be there.
Labor Day.
What?
Labor Day.
Labor Day.
You said Memorial.
I understand. Maybe I'm trying to just kind of be done. Anyway, all right. So sorry about that. Labor Day. Sorry about that. Thank you. So this middle line is Fairwood, and so this is the most dramatic increase. The audience members, I'm doing air quotes that you can't see, is basically this was the uptick in the independent study program. And then you can see now then as they try to trickle back out, at our peak, the independent study program had a little over 140 students, and that's again TK through 8th grade. And then they started to exit back out of the program, and I think today we're down to just under 90, as just an example. And so that's that. So I just wanted to highlight those 2 trends. So basically, again, the relatively low enrollment at the beginning of the year, and then it trends up toward Labor Day, and then just this is a spoiler for later. Ellis is out now our largest elementary school. Okay. This is the even more detailed enrollment for our 2 other programs, preschool and middle school. So preschool, this is a common trend. They will always gain students throughout the year. So the preschool is gaining upwards of almost 190 students. I think today they're over 190. So that program is constantly adding students. And so that's a trend this is a typical trend. And then the middle schools are a little flat, as you can tell. The one thing I'll point out is SMS is now under 1,000 students. CMS kind of mirroring the Lakewood Bishop dynamic started low, and they added roughly, I don't know, 30 or so students from the first 2 months of the school year. Okay. All right, this is the 8-year enrollment trend. And so the kind of brownish orange line was from the last time we had our demographers report with the 3-year or with the long range projections, which is why we chose not to, just because they were already so skewed. But you can see again, this was the 500 down, the 500 down here. I just included this just to really show that it is continuing to decline, but it will flatten out And the future study will then be able to revise this future trend. Okay. All right, this is the main reason I'm trying to present from this is that this is the classic chart going back, showing about 18 years worth of enrollment over the school year. And I'm gonna let this run. Many of you have seen this before, and we've added the past 2 years to this chart, but you get an idea of the ups and downs of our school enrollment for the past 16 years. Sometimes I can't help but like, oh, go Bishop or something, I don't know.
But you know how it comes out, right?
I do, I see, yeah, spoiler. Okay.
Maybe if you cheer harder for Bishop, it'll change.
Yeah, it'll change the outcome, all right. So this is our final enrollment. So again, Ellis is now our largest elementary, but if you notice, there's these like kind of tight bands of schools now. We have 3 schools around 620, 625. Those are the Ellis, Cherry Chase, and Cumberland. These are elementary. And then Fairwood is up at 461, but remember that is housing the independent study program. And then the other elementaries are floating around 390. You'd have to go back to, what did I say, like roughly 2005, 2006 to have the most, this is as tight of a band, if you make any sense, where this is as tight of a band of enrollment between the schools as we've had since early 2000s. It's kind of an interesting piece. All right. Moving forward. All right, so the current year analysis is that maintaining our staffing levels from the prior year is paying dividends. So we roughly maintained our overall staffing, actually classified, certificated. Classified we actually added in the areas of like health assistants and paras. But the certificated staff was maintained from the prior year, but we had roughly 500 less students. So paying dividends means overall smaller class sizes, and we're anecdotally getting this information when we do our site visits. It's not uniform across the board because the loose staffing allows us to not overflow students. And so anytime there's a hard cap, there's a cost when we have to then overflow students. If the 25th student comes into the classroom, we have to identify an overflow site. So there's kind of a dual benefit in the sense that overall smaller class sizes in general, which is great for recovery and reinvention, vastly less overflow. And then this is actually working well in conjunction with the independent study program that we spun up quickly. Rochelle and Shayna are doing a great job having conversations with folks because again, we were having an uptick of interest coming out of the winter break into independent study program, but people were looking for it, like maybe they wanted an option just to not send them in person, but the independent study program really is a true, different kind of intervention. So the school site did a great job of explaining what that is, and so we didn't see this mass exodus back in. But it also, as you saw over the past 3 or 4 months, the program has contracted where we've been able to kind of contract 4 sections. Those students were able to then flow back to their school sites because we have the capacity. I'm not going to say that there aren't 1 or 2 spots where there happens to just be too many 4th graders in that because again, students don't come in packages of 24 or 32. But again, it would have been way worse if we tried to cap it at a certain range or tried to maintain some sort of artificial class size. So I think we got it approximately right this year. Independent study, I said, is serving as well. I gave that great option for our community. Again, 140 students in at the beginning of the year, and it's been slowly coming down as they come back into our school sites. Enrollment is stabilizing because as you saw, most of those charts after the initial uptick were kind of flat. And then our current year enrollment is following the overall trend of kind of the school year starts, folks come in through Labor Day. And then once after the mid-year break hits, then it starts to kind of trickle down. That's a normal trend. And again, we're seeing that because of the past 4 months of data is actually relatively flat. So those charts are kind of boring, but at least that shows that we're stabilizing into next year. And as the enrollment projections show, we're only going to be down 72 more students next year. All right. So wrapping it up, next year, the next steps are we're going to start to work with the demographer this spring. I'm sorry, I jumped ahead. We're going to launch our open enrollment and registration on February 1st for the 22-23 school year. That blows my mind that that's the school year we're going into. Oh, okay. Plus, we formed a committee to really plan the expansion of transitional kindergarten. And so, because again, we're adding the January and February birth dates to that. We use this data to really evaluate our staffing levels and hiring needs and making us allow to deploy resources in the right area, in the right places. We want to conduct that multi-year enrollment projection, so we're already starting to have conversations with the demographer. So I want to make sure exactly kind of what he's testing to make sure that we have solid projections, because it is going to be pretty crucial then going from this point forward, now that the pandemic is still with us, but I guess converting to something that we're living with, it's not going to end, if that makes any sense. And then lastly, we want to continue to track enrollment to help plan our future facility needs, including the need for TK expansion, including the fact that just because there's an empty classroom, we don't want to necessarily just fill that with students, because we have this other programmatic needs across the board. So we really want to use this declining enrollment as an opportunity to kind of really see how the facilities can be a part of the solution of reinvention, reimagining schools, or providing just other resources as another tool that we can meet meet our students' needs. So that concludes this presentation snapshot. Again, this is a 1 year. We're all looking into next year only. The next report will have those projections out that we can kind of dissect into, but that's kind of the snapshot of where we are right now. So, President Watson, I will open up for any questions.
Thank you. If any member of the public wishes to speak on this item, please use the raise hand feature now. No. Do we see any?
Yes.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, oh, then I have something to say. Okay, oh no, I wrote that down somewhere and it went away. Give me 1 second. I believe it's just that you have 3 minutes of time. This altogether, we won't be taking more than 20 minutes of questions. And if you could please state your name for the record, that would be great.
All right, so we have a DAO. You have 3 minutes.
David O'Brien. I really like that interactive, I think it was maybe number 3. Slide number 7 or so. Is that tool showing the timeline available on the website?
Or can you hear me? I can hear. Oh, okay. No, Mr. Ryan, no, it's based off of a web interlink called Infogram. Let me look into that to see if we could put that widget up somewhere just to show, because yeah, it is kind of neat. So definitely, I'll take a look.
Or if you had a presentation with just each year, yeah, you could scroll through without the tool. But that was really that historical data was very, very interesting.
You got it.
Thank you. Any other questions from the public? If you have a question, please raise your hand using the raise hand feature.
You have Nancy?
Sure. Now it's time for board discussion and questions. Nancy?
Yes. As it occurred to me, I was wondering of students who are going to charter schools now. Is that a stable trend? We're not seeing any big upticks with our families who are choosing charter schools as an alternative.
I don't think so. That's not the word on the street that we're kind of getting anecdotally. It is a little difficult for us. I know that we do track when we work with Lori's department on some of the billing that we'll get from certain charter pieces, but yeah, nothing out of the ordinary, Nancy. Okay. I just think it's an overall just decline in school age. The students that are departing are leaving for a multitude of reasons, not any one particular exodus. So.
Okay.
I think the one particular exodus is the cost of living.
That is true, because that used to be our number one, the number one lead when we was talking about the ability to support, have family support here, and that could be exacerbated.
And COVID just kind of made it easier to keep your job and leave.
That is correct.
For some people.
Correct. So.
Any other comments?
I just have a quick question on the TK. This is more not necessarily numbers, but just you're saying January, February, but my understanding is it's extending, like the old cutoff was December 2nd, and now it's going through February 2nd. Okay, so it's not really all of February, just the very beginning.
Correct, sorry, I apologize. Thank you for that nuance.
That's okay, I just wanted to, in case I knew it wrong, I just wanted to know what the dates were.
That is correct. It is an extension of 2 technical months from December to January, January to February 2nd, so.
Yeah.
And the last movement in the last couple of years, there was 500 and 500. I suppose that again has to do with COVID and the cost of living and people being able to work from different places.
So we were projected to be pretty steep. So if I'm going to draw a line this way, COVID really made it drop to this effect. So we hit the 2-year out projection like 2 years earlier. And that's the way. That's why I kind of showed that one chart this way. But it's projected to be flattened. So our best bet is the fact that that was the COVID exodus, and again offset by additional low birth rates 5 years ago in general, but then the housing development in Sunnyvale is still maintaining its pace. Those are kind of offsetting, which is going to make us flatten out.
Okay, and then but you say, well, this was actually a discussion a few meetings ago. When we started talking about the projections, that it had something also, it's also that it's happening in the area and in the state. It's not Sunnyvale.
I would say in general the state, but Santa Clara County especially, most districts are experiencing that steep decline in enrollment. So, and that was true prior to pandemic, and again, in general, most districts experience this acceleration due to the pandemic.
And we have the same as in other cities around. In the same county.
We were a little late to the game. So, Cupertino, for example, a few years prior to us, had steep declines and was very concerned. Other areas of the really kind of the region.
Well, say we were even going up while everyone else was dropping for a
little
bit.
A little bit. Well, there was the one year we went up, I think was because of Spark.
Yeah, but we
you
saw
see
a
that
little
little
bit of
bump there?
that before that.
And then we started going down again.
Yeah.
So.
But Cupertino had a steeper.
Yes.
Yeah.
A couple of years before us. Everyone else was a couple of years before us, and we were surprised, like Michelle said, that we weren't quite declining. And then so it all kind of hit for us at once. So COVID and the expected declines all kind of came at the same time.
But it's still in our master plan and how we're, for example, building Ellis is still for full school as it was 2 years ago.
Yes.
100 kids.
Well, I don't know.
It's not in right now. No, it's not at its peak.
Yeah, we're building as it's gonna be in the peak by the time it's done or something. I mean, we're building for
I'm just not sure it's 800.
Okay.
If that were here, we could ask. But is there? How many students are we building Ellis for?
We will have the capacity to withhold the enrollment, the highest enrollment in the last 5 years, I think.
So I think it is probably.
Oh, maybe it is. Pretty close to 8. Yeah. Okay.
I can give you the specific number, but I can do that tomorrow.
Okay.
You're right.
Okay, anything else? Nancy, no?
I just have one more. Do you know if it's possible? I mean, so we don't know, like we can't know for sure why 500 people have left, right? But just when you're thinking about like the county numbers, right? Like we're matching county numbers. Are there county numbers to see if how like the increased enrollment of private schools in the county, right? So we can't know exactly ours. But if that's an easy number to find, I would be interested, right? Because that would help us gain an idea. Do we think we lost a lot of students to private schools? Or like if their numbers stayed the same, then we probably didn't lose that many, right? So if that's an easy number to find, that would be interesting, but it's not worth,
Okay. Yeah, we'll do just a little digging. I'm just not sure where if there's a place that private schools or charter schools are able to have to
Yeah, so
report
like,
the
I don't know if
numbers.
it's an easy number to find,
Right,
but if it is easy, that would be interesting.
We will ask, yeah, because it's just, that's another indicator that we can see that if it's decline versus our decline in their
Yeah,
uptick.
or if they're just staying the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, because if for some reason we lost 400 students to private schools, which I don't think we did, that would be helpful to know, right? Like, oh, what do we need to different? I mean, it's COVID, but
Yeah, we'll take a quick minute to look. Okay.
Sounds good.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank
Really appreciate it. Thanks to everyone who worked on it. Please thank the consultants too. Okay, we're on to number 9, review and action. 9A, presentation, trustee areas, the adoption of resolution R2213 in the matter of adopting trustee area boundary map and election sequence for election of members of the Board of Education. Dr. Dallier.
Yes, so this is exciting. We're at the end of a long road to get to this exciting, I think it's really a progress. I really will mark this as progress in our school district. And so we have with us today virtually Angela Benuelos of Cooperative Strategies, and William Tunick is in person. And Angela will begin. There you are. Oh, we can't hear you. I don't think you're on mute, but we still can't hear you. Try again. Oh, she's got an idea.
It is amazing how much you can tell just like looking at a face, right?
Is it possibly on our end from promoting her to a panelist?
I don't know.
The user solutions for her to call that number.
Did you want?
So if Angela calls the number from her phone and we talk here that way.
The Zoom number, yeah.
Did you give it to her?
She has it in her email.
Okay.
I saw a thumbs up.
Yeah, she's probably calling. She's good with numbers.
Don't distract her.
Nancy, can you just say something? I just want to make sure the audio is working completely.
Oh, yes, I can say something. Does that work for you?
I wanted to make sure it wasn't.
It wasn't like all audio was
Yeah.
having an issue. That's
wanna
good,
make sure.
good double check.
Everything you can say, you have complete advantage because you can't reply, so you can say anything you want to.
We'll get there.
Technology's great, but sometimes it causes problems.
Well, while she's getting ready, I'll review where we've gone so far, what we've done so far. So on September 2nd, the board adopted a resolution indicating its intent to transition from at-large to by-trustee area elections. At that same meeting, the board held its first pre-map public hearing as part of the process to adopt a trustee area boundary map in order to transition to by-trustee area elections. The board held its second public hearing on September 16th, and at that same meeting received a presentation from its demographer, Cooperative Strategies, and Angela, on the demographics of the district and the process for development of the trustee area boundaries. Following these public hearings on September 30th, the district posted the first draft trustee area boundary map or maps on its website. The law requires the board to hold 3 public hearings prior to approval of any boundary maps. At its October 7th, 2021 meeting, the board held its first public hearing regarding the draft trustee area boundary maps. After providing an opportunity for public comment, the board provided feedback to the demographer. Subsequently, on October 28th, the district posted revised draft trustee area boundary maps on its website. At its November 4th, 2021 meeting, the board held its second public hearing regarding the draft trustee area boundary maps. And on December 1st, the district posted further revised draft trustee area boundary maps again on its website. On December 9th, the board held its third public hearing regarding the draft trustee area boundary maps. Subsequently, on January 5th, the district held another community input session on the potential boundaries. So tonight, the board will consider the draft maps and select a final map and associated election sequence to be submitted to the County Committee on School District Organization for its consideration and approval. The resolution indicates that the transition is in furtherance of the purposes of the California Voting Rights Act and asks the county committee to approve the transition without the need for an election. Upon approval by the county committee and submission to the county registrar of voters, the map will become effective for the next election, November 22nd election cycle. And then there's also additional information about the process and the draft trustee area maps on our websites. So, Angela, do you have volume yet?
Yes, I am here. I do apologize. Right before I joined the meeting, my computer decided to do an update and I probably corrupted my microphone. I
That's
apologize.
okay. You're back. And maybe I
Okay.
just said everything you were gonna say. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. So I think this is a bittersweet moment for all of us. It's been a 5-month long process. But if necessary, I'll go through the presentation if you're have availability to share that, if necessary, or we can
Board,
just
you
jump
wanna-
into the scenario.
You wanna see the presentation?
I think that'd be wise to have the presentation.
Okay.
Okay. Great. Okay, so we're going to start off on slide 1, where we go over the 2020 census data. And here we have the demographics for the entire school district boundaries. And again, I'd like to preface that this does not affect any attendance boundaries or school locations or where children attend. This is only how you elect your board members, and the community votes for their board members. So yeah, so within the community, the largest protected class voters are the Asian population at 48.6%, followed by the Hispanic Latino community at 19%. The total population amongst the district boundaries is 96,550. So we utilize the total population to help us balance the number of inhabitants per trustee area. So in this case, it's 5. So we take that 96,550 and we divide that by 5 to give us an ideal size of how many inhabitants should be allocated to each trustee. And if we move to the next slide, we provide a color graduated map of the largest protected class voters, the Asian community. Here you'll notice that the Asian community, the actual voters, eligible voters, are 15,534. And the color graduated map, you see the darker the area, the more dense it is, the lighter the area, the less dense, meaning less people of that particular demographic live in those areas. And then if we look at the total, it's 46,721. So these are eligible voters. It's a huge difference from the total population. It's about less than 50% of the overall population. If we move to the next slide, we provide a color graduated map for the citizen voting age population estimates for the Hispanic Latino community being the second largest protected class voters in the school district boundaries. The Hispanic Latino community is at 17.52% for a total of 8,187. So we utilize the citizen voting age population estimates to help us identify communities of interest and to assist with not impairing their ability to elect a candidate of their choice and provide representation for those communities. If we move to the next slide, please. So here, jumping back 5 months, we provided a few public hearing options for community and other stakeholders to provide their input on how we should draw these boundaries. Forward a few scenarios after, here we are with scenario 1A, with trustee area number 1 being the yellow, trustee area number 2, the green, trustee area 3, the pink or coral color, trustee area 4, the blue, and trustee area 5, the purple color. If we move to the next slide, please, we'll have a breakdown of the demographics of that particular scenario. So if we look at the bar on the top, we see the total population. Again, this includes children, senior citizens, eligible voters, non-eligible, in other words, citizens, non-citizens. So the ideal population size per trustee is 19,310. This particular scenario has a variance of 4.7%. And the way that we calculate the variance is we take the most populated trustee area and the least populated area, and we get that difference, and we divide that by the ideal population size. So that would give us a variance. The allowable threshold is 10%. So we're allowed to move inhabitants up to that 10% variance to be within compliance. Other notable items within this demographic table is that although there's not enough eligible voters to create a protected majority class, there are a few plural districts where the total population is above 50%. So in order for a community or an area to be classified as a protected class area, the CVAP, or the citizen voting age population, would have to be above 50% for the particular protected class. Since that was not able to, we were not able to do that, we were able to create these plural districts where the total population is above 50%. And that can be noted in trustee area number 2 at 51.4%, trustee area 3 for the Asian community at 54.6%, and trustee area 5 at 51.7%. If we move to the next scenario, please. So the distribution of schools. So overall, it was thought that it was best that each trustee, instead of just keeping each board member aligned to a certain school, it was best that each board member represented multiple schools. Although the fiduciary duty to the board members is to the whole community and to the school district as a whole, it was better to make this divide the community this way. So area 1 covers portions, if not all, of Cherry Chase Elementary, Cumberland, Vargas, Ellis, Bishop, and Columbia and Sunnyvale Middle School. Area 2 is Vargas Elementary, Bishop, Sunnyvale Middle School, and Columbia Middle School. Area 3 is Cumberland, Ellis, Bishop, and Columbia and Sunnyvale Middle School. Bishop, in area 4, we have Bishop Elementary, Ellis, San Miguel Elementary, and Columbia and Sunnyvale Middle Schools. Area 5 covers portions of Lakewood, Fairwood, San Miguel, and Columbia Middle School. And the reason why area 5 is all the way at the top is the natural dividers, the amount of population that lives up there. It was really difficult to have them grasp the lower southern portion of the schools. If we look at scenario 3A, which is the next slide, here again, trustee area 1 is the yellow, 2 is the green, 3 is the purple, 4 is the blue, and 5 is the purple area. And here you can see again the natural dividers. We follow the elementary school outlines are in blue, so it's easier to identify how many trustees are representing those districts, those schools, I mean. If we move to the next slide, we'll look at what the demographics shows us. So here again, the total population is 96,550. Ideal population size is 19,310. The variance for this scenario is 6.8%. So this scenario, we were able to accomplish one plural district. However, again, to make note of it is there's not enough eligible voters of a protected class to classify a majority protected area. So within the Asian population being the largest protected class voters, we were able to kind of almost evenly distribute that population amongst each area. And it's most noted under the TP column, also known as total population, at trustee area 1 with 48.2%, trustee area 2 at 49.3%, trustee area 3 at 49.9%, trustee area 4 at 52.4%, and trustee area 5 at 43.4%. If we move to the next slide, please. The distribution of schools amongst each area. For area 1, we have Cherry Chase, Vargas, and Sunnyvale Middle School. In area 2, it's Cherry Chase, Cumberland, Ellis, and Sunnyvale Middle School. Area 3 is Ellis, Bishop, San Miguel, Columbia and Sunnyvale Middle Schools. Area 4 is Lakewood, Fairwood, Bishop, Vargas, and then both Sunnyvale and Columbia Middle Schools. Area 5 is Bishop, San Miguel, and then both the Lakewood and Columbia Middle Schools. And if we move to the next slide. So here's our 5-month journey in a nice table format. Today is the 4th public hearing on trustee area scenarios, and we anticipate to hopefully do a selection of a trustee area map and get that adopted and hold the county committee hopefully within like late January, sometime in February. And because the whole state of California right now, who is at large, who does trustee area voting, is redistricting. So if we can get it done by February, that would be great, but it may be pushed till March because of the workload that the county committee right now is anticipating. And the first election with the adopted map would be held on November 8th, 2022. And then that concludes the presentation. So if you have any questions, or William and I are both here to answer.
Well, first, thank you very much. And first, is there any member of the public who wishes to speak on this item? If there is anyone, please use the raise hand feature on Zoom now. Okay, seeing none, actually, board, I was told before this meeting we need to make a motion before we can talk about it. So, oh, I see Nancy has her hand up. Nancy, could you make a motion?
Yes, for purposes of discussion, I move that we approve scenario 1A.
Second.
Great. Okay, so any discussion from the board?
So I can start. I think what's tricky, right, is I think we for sure need to make a decision tonight. What's hard for me is I used to not think I was a perfectionist, but I think in some ways I am, and part of me like wants to find the perfect map, right? And we're not gonna find the perfect map, right? So I struggle, like there are good pieces to 1A, and then there are parts of it that I don't love so much, or I think aren't great. And then, but the same thing's true of 3A, right? So my general thoughts kind of about some of those like key parts is, I think most of us generally, while we don't want people to feel alienated, we do like the idea of each area having as many schools as possible. I feel like 1A does that a little bit more than 3A, but not necessarily fully. And then looking at them, like when I look at 1A, I like it, except like the yellow, so trustee area 1, right, looks a little bit, like it's hard to make them clean cut, right? But then when you look at 3A, then trustee area 4 is the one that looks a little bit kind of, I don't know, funny, I guess is the word I'm gonna use. Anyway, so those are just, those are my general thoughts, right? I didn't really say like there's one I like better or the other, but that's just kind of what's been circulating in my head as I've been thinking about it.
Isabel? Yeah, I mean, both of them have what I like from the beginning is, you know, if we have like an idea of having more advocates for each school, I think these two options, we are having that, like, even though our commitment is to the whole district, if you have more advocates or each school have more people looking for one school, and I think both of them accomplish that a lot. Well, obviously there are the two corner schools that are complicated geographically, like Fairwood and Cherry Chase. That's not going to be able to, that's going to be complicated to happen. But then I like more, you know, like one area of the map in one side, but the other, both of them have their wonky parts, like the weird parts.
I like your word wonky more than my word funny.
Yeah. And I mean, if you see in the connection, for example, I will imagine that, you know, the big divider, it will be as a community, although, I don't know, it's hard to say because I don't think the district, the voting district is gonna make a community. It's not like we're gonna make a county party or a special party because now we're a community. Communities are made by the school side, by the elementary school and maybe the middle schools, not by these districts in particular. And we're all gonna be looking for every school. But I feel like if, for example, Fairwood may have more connection with the other side of the the 101, that neighborhood, like right there between Lawrence and the other side of the 101 from Fairwood, they might be more connected. I don't know, as a community maybe. There are
The
more,
San Miguel area?
yeah, that little corner, maybe more like in the purple in the first map, looking at that particular area of the city. But then again, like the connection, yeah, I don't know if the connection with the
Wait, are you talking
District
about,
one.
are you talking about the part, this part here?
Yeah, that's part there, because it's, the thing is like, the blue part, definitely. I mean, I'm okay with both of them. I don't have any real problem with any of them. I will be happy with any of them, to tell you the truth. But both of them have like a different, like a funny part, like, and the blue one, you know, connecting that area, the Vargas area, all the way to Fairwood might be a little bit too much of a stretch, maybe. But I remember the point that Jeffrey made about representation and that why he liked this map more than the 1A, and it kind of resonated too. So I don't know, I end up being okay with any of them. Have to make a decision.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually, I do like 1A better. And I think that's because of the spread I see on the scenarios where 1A, 4 of the 5 actually incorporate 2 of the both middle schools. And I think that keeps everybody accountable to the entire community, right? And the only one that doesn't is Area 5, which is more Columbian focused, and I think I'm comfortable with that too. You know, and I think these maps are going to touch on our OCD no matter what, however they're arranged, right? But it's just, yeah, I think this is the distribution demographics is interesting. I mean, and I really appreciate the work that was done. I'm sure that was, I can't even comprehend the detail that go over in this, so that's, I appreciate that, thank you. But like I said, the winning swaying side of this, the detail was just the connection to the middle schools on all 4. You know, and I think as we went through this process, I think I kind of like evolved in my own, what I'm looking for, because I think I originally thought, well, I guess it would be kind of good to have people advocate for a school, trying to keep the community in mind, but then I think that became more of a worry, and I like the spanning out to several schools, and I think this made it a little clearer that middle schools really are the answer to keep everybody connected to the entire school district community, so.
Nancy?
Yes, so when I look at the maps, I look at it from 2 perspectives. The perspective of the community as a whole, and then keeping the whole community connected with the schools. And that's why 1A resonates with me more than 3A. When I talk about the community being connected with the schools, most of our voters do not have students in our community. So I'm looking at what affiliations or neighborhood connected points make sense. And this is more contiguous with how neighborhoods are falling within our district boundaries. I think it would be easier for members of the community to identify with the geographical area because of the contiguousness. That I will agree, it was literally a big stretch to think about the Vargas area connecting with the Fairwood area. That seems too much of a geographical challenge for a member of the community to connect with so many disparate communities. And I think that 1A has a more logical flow to it from that particular perspective. As far as the communities, the school communities feeling connectedness and seeing our district as a whole, I think that 1A accomplishes that. When I think about Palo Alto always had designated schools that certain trustees were supposed to go to and cover. I think that I'd rather have more schools be having advocates for multiple voices within the new board rather than automatically set up a territorial kind of isolation that's just naturally created by the distinguishing only individual school sites and not having an overlay with a larger part of the district. As Jeff had said, that the middle schools are really that touch point to have a larger sense of the community as a school community and community as a whole. And I'm also looking at someone running. What's going to be, part of this is to make things accessible and having an area that makes sense from a geographic perspective, that there aren't natural geographic barriers to get from one point within that area to another point, certainly is very helpful, I think, as far as thinking about the political component of it, which is the smallest part of what your role is as a trustee, but it's the first big hurdle that you encounter when you think about running. And so I want to make this as accessible to potential candidates as possible. And I think that the way that things are designed in 1A is an easier lift than the way things are designed in 3A. If I look at the blue area, trustee area number 4, that is just a very challenging area to try and connect and cover with.
Thank you, Nancy. I have very similar feelings to everyone here. Lots of small pieces that we could argue about. I do, just like everyone here has said, I do love the idea of, like some of you had said, I love the idea that the middle schools, both middle schools are on 1A for so many of the trustee areas, because it gives them the coverage of the whole district, and also the mention earlier about more plurality districts in that first one, which I think is another factor to look at. So I don't know, board, do you feel like we could take a vote? Okay, If we're ready to vote, all those in favor, please say aye. Of the motion to adopt 1A, scenario 1A. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The chair votes aye, it's unanimous, we passed 1A. There we go.
Okay, so we know the next steps, we go to the county, this is sent to the county committee, that's right, Angela? And
Correct.
then-
Yes.
Good.
So, yeah, so William will reach out to the county committee and they'll set a date, and they usually pick a board meeting, or they may have us do a special board meeting. We'll all come out again. They'll hold another public hearing, the final one, I promise. And then they will usually adopt the resolution and implement your new map.
Great. Awesome. Thank you so much for all your work, and thank you for coming tonight.
Yeah. Well, thank you all, and we'll be seeing each other in the next few weeks to wrap this up. So this is not goodbye.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, have a good night.
Thank you, William.
Well done,
We
William.
appreciate your support.
Usually the best thing when the attorney says nothing, you've done a good job.
Careful.
That means you can.
Stop talking, please.
I think you've said too much now.
Okay, we're gonna move on to item 9B, to accept and approve the 2020-2021 financial audit report, Measure BB parcel tax report, and Measure G bond audit and procedures report. Chief Business Officer Lori, oh no, hello.
Good evening.
You're not Lori, good.
Ahmad.
Hi.
Dr. Gallagher, how are you?
Good, thank you for being great.
Thank you for having me. This is working, right?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Good evening. I am the partner in charge of the audit. I am also a parent for 2 kids that are attending the district. Yes.
How do you say your last name?
It's Ahmad Duraibe, and I am a representative of Eid Bailey, which is the independent auditors for the district. So you are a government and you are required to go through a financial audit and a couple of compliance audits, federal compliance audit and a state compliance audit. Scope of the audit is to ensure that the financial statements are fairly stated. It is essentially a process in which we confirm and affirm the financial information that was presented to you by management. We come in after the fact, we confirm these balances, and we opine on these financial statements. The audit is basically 3 phases. The interim phase is a process in which it starts at the beginning of the year. We look at the manner that you process receipts, the manner that you process payroll, the manner that you process purchasing and disbursement. We look at compliance with federal granting requirements and state granting requirements. And then we wait for management to close the books, and then we come in after the fact. We confirm these balances, we confirm your cash and investments, your debt, your receivables, your LCFF, and then we work with the district on issuing these financial statements in accordance with accounting standards. They call them government accounting standards board. And I'm pleased to let you know that we had issued a clean opinion on these financial statements, meaning that they are fairly stated. We encountered no difficulties in the performance of the audit. Lori had done an amazing job in giving us all the information that we needed, and we had no adjustments to the financial statements. Now, I cannot recall, is the bond audit on the agenda as well? The Measure G?
Yes.
Okay, great. So above and beyond the financial statement audit, you are required to undergo an audit for Proposition 39 related to the bonds. Effectively, it's ensuring that the proceeds and the funds for Measure G are segregated from the district. And it is a financial audit. We confirm your bond proceeds. We confirm your cash balances related to those bond proceeds. And then above and beyond, they call it a performance audit. Effectively, it is a compliance audit, making sure that the expenses that were charged to Measure G are in compliance with what the voters had voted on. And that is the second set of financial statements that are presented to you in your packet tonight. And again, it's a clean opinion, meaning that we noted no exceptions. We typically test 80 or 90% of the expenses related to that measure. And we noted no exceptions with respect to the compliance. With that, I'll be more than happy to take any questions.
Okay, so there's no one here in person. If there's any member of the public who wishes to speak on this item, please use the raise hand feature now. No, none there. Do we need a motion before we talk about it? Is that correct? Okay, so board, we need a motion.
I move to accept and approve the 2020-21 financial audit report, Measure BB parcel tax report, and Measure G bond audit and procedural report as presented.
I second. Board, any discussion, questions, or comments?
Just thank you. We think we have great financial people, but it's good to know that it's true.
Anything Nancy or Isabel? No? Just more thank yous.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you
for
very
having
much.
us.
Are we ready to vote? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Chair votes aye, and with that, the motion passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. Thank you, Lori, as well. Your team. Okay, so we're on to item number 9C, approval of out-of-state travel. Board policy 3350, travel expenses. If there's any member of the public who wishes to speak on this item, please use the raise hand feature now. No, okay. So this one has me explaining the request. I should probably go to that item. Basically, this is travel for CSBA's. Normally we do a ledge action week in March going up to Sacramento, and all school board members are invited to that. County superintendent or county school board members, superintendents are also invited to this one. This is at the federal level. This is in Washington, D.C. School board trustees, Cubis Flamerich, Maginot, and I are all requesting approval for out-of-state travel. It's a training followed by 2 days of meetings with legislators and policymakers in Washington, D.C. in April. And the reason why to go is basically this year, California has been profoundly affected by the pandemic. There's a lot of money at stake, and we're basically going to advocate for California students in Washington, D.C. So the cost is a registration fee of $600 per person plus travel expenses. That registration cost will go up if we register after February 15th. And furthermore, this is very similar, the type of work we'll be doing will be very similar to what we did on delegate assembly, where you kind of get some training about how to advocate for California students. And then they go in and they have all the appointments and meetings set up. The people we'll be meeting with will have an idea of what we're going to come and talk to them about. But it's our job to illustrate the stories that will better serve California students. And it's similar to what we would be doing going to Legislative Action Week. So I guess just to talk about it, not to approve it or anything, we need a motion.
I move approval of the out-of-state travel request to attend the federal legislative advocacy with NSBA.
I second.
Okay, board, any discussion, comments, or questions about this?
The only comment that I would have, well, I have two comments. One is that I would like to have a report back from you about what your biggest aha moment was about that experience. I'd also like to be able to continue this advocacy and invite other members to be able to participate if financially we're able to do so in the future. And then the third thing, it doesn't affect this vote, but I would ask that we look at our regulations and update them. I think sharing rooms or the expectation of sharing rooms is not appropriate anymore for a wide variety of reasons, but certainly one could say during COVID, it is not recommended to be in close proximity with other people for extended periods of time. So.
Thank you. Any other comments or?
I was gonna say it's her second one. I was gonna say that same piece is if this becomes a more annual or more often thing that I'm having a variety of board members who want to have this opportunity, I think it's great.
Are you ready to vote? Yeah. Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Chair says aye, with that the motion passes. So, well, thank you, and thank you to Jesus and to Mike and to helping us put this all together, put this on the agenda and encouraging us to go and do that. So thank you. So now we're on to item 10, consent agenda items. Any item on the consent agenda is subject to review and discussion prior to being approved by the board. If necessary, any items may be removed for separate action. The public may address the board regarding items on the consent agenda. If there's any member of the public who wishes to speak on this item, please use the raised hand feature now. And seeing, would the board like to pull any item for separate consideration before the vote?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
I second.
Okay, board, any comments? I see Nancy, you have your hand up.
Oh, I realize there's a timeline this year for the SARC reports. When more data becomes available, I'd like to be able to discuss them in the years outgoing.
Thanks, Nancy.
Okay, any other questions or comments? I'm trying to go down my list. I'm like, wrote this all out. I'm like, where am I? Sorry.
You're doing great.
Okay. Okay, any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we're ready for a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Nancy, are you in? Do you vote aye?
Yeah, I said aye.
Oh, I couldn't hear you, sorry. I couldn't see or hear you. Okay, sorry. So with that, the chair votes aye and the consent agenda has passed. Thank you, everyone. Number 11, information agenda, the Williams Uniform Complaint Settlement Quarterly Report. I watched a video of this where Jeremy, Assistant Superintendent Jeremy Nishihara, gave a brief explanation. So, are you up? Is there a description about this item? I believe that's almost exactly what Michelle said.
Exactly, yes. We're required by law to bring a quarterly update on any Williams complaints that were submitted for the quarter. We are in just completed quarter 2, which is October, November, December, and there are no complaints received to the district.
Thank you. There's normally no public comment on information items?
No, we don't usually just go through.
No. Okay, so on to number 12, public comments on closed session items.
If there's any member of the public who wishes to speak on this item, please use the raise hand feature now. Nope, okay, so do I just state the time? It's 8:55 p.m. We will convene for closed session. When we come back, we will report out and adjourn. We will take, do we want to take a quick break on the way there, like you usually do, or no?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll take a couple minutes to get into closed session. For everyone who may not be here when we return, thank you and have a great week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, you're calling me again, I guess? Hi, just a quick call and getting ready to go into closed session. I just want to say hi. And I love you. And I didn't know how late you were going to be. So I just want to say hi and I can call again. Alrighty. I love you. Okay. Bye-bye.
Okay. Now the approval of the agenda, go to the end. Thank you for bearing with me. Okay. I'm gonna get the wrong time.
It's 9:32.
Thank you. Okay, is, geez, I got the wrong, that's the problem with writing the script. Okay, is it 9:33 now?
Sure.
Okay.
Yep.
We're reconvening to open session at 9:33 PM. The board met in closed session to conference with our labor negotiator. No action was taken. We're on to item 15, future meetings and adjournment. Our next meeting will be Thursday, February 3rd, 2022 at 6 PM. There'll be a regular board meeting in the district office boardroom and on Zoom. This meeting is adjourned at 9:34 PM.
Still 33, but.
33, okay, thank you.
It's 34 somewhere maybe.
Okay,